via mod.gov or directly from the council website from the link which was sent out to members. When you are invited to speak by the chair, please could you clearly state who you are for the benefit of anybody who is listening to the meeting so that they can identify who is speaking and ensure that you use the microphones if you are in the room. The meeting is audio recorded by the council. As agendas are now viewed electronically, could members and officers please refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist everyone present in finding the appropriate information. In respect of housekeeping, I need to advise you that there is no expected fire alarm today, but should it happen, please follow the Democratic Services officers and they will lead the way out. And possibly the most important announcement this morning is that it is Councillor Osborne's birthday, so we all wish her many happy returns.
We didn't think for it.
21 again, so it's very impressive.
Thank you, Chairman. I wish. I definitely wish.
Good, thank you. Apologies for absence. We have them from Councillor Seeb, Councillor Ham, and Councillor Osborne is substituting for Councillor Ham. Councillor Mansell is joining us online. Are there any others, please?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. No, we have not received any other apologies.
Very much. So the minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. May I take them as a true record, please? Yes? You? All in favour of that? Okay, thank you. Are there any matters arising that anybody needs to draw to our attention? Yes, Councillor Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the minutes, it states that the difference in electricity use between the data centre and the new computer learning centres is 8 times. Correction, it should be 10 times.
Make that change. Is there anything else, ladies and gentlemen? No, thank you. So are there any declarations of interest, please? Yes, Councillor Stanton.
Yes, not a pecuniary interest, but people should be aware I was a director of Hay Group, which is now part of Corn Ferry for many years, but I don't have a pension or anything from it.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other declarations of interest? Right, thank you. Now, agenda item 4 is public question time, and we have a question this morning from Mr. Orr. But I think, Mr. Orr, you would rather that question be put immediately in advance of the item to which it relates, which I think is item 6 on the agenda. So I'm going to exercise my discretion and call Mr. Orr at that point, if that's okay. Thank you. So we will move on then to agenda item 5, which is the pay and rewards business case. And I'm going to ask Councillor Theo Butt-Phillip to introduce the report. And then Nicola Bettridge, Dawn Bettridge and Nicola Hayek may want to comment afterwards. But I suspect as Dawn is in the room, it will be Dawn. Councillor Butt-Phillip.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will introduce this briefly as members have previously seen an earlier version of this, but we did commit at that stage to bring the full business case back both to scrutiny and to the executive, and that is what we are doing now. Members will be well aware of the need for a full review of pay and grading. We have not done such, we have not done a full review for 21 years, that is Somerset Council, although there has been a light touch review in 2014. At the moment, we have a large number of staff on differing terms and conditions as a result of various changes, insourcing, outsourcing, and local government reorganisation, leading to 5 different organisations becoming one, not remembering, of course, that was previously 6 organisations. So it's very necessary to do this. We know the challenges we have in particular areas of the council in recruitment, with our salaries not always being market right. We know there are a significant number of retention and recruitment allowances in place, and we need to develop a much more consistent and appropriate and market right system for both job evaluation and pay and grading. So that is what this paper seeks to deal with. I will disappoint you slightly, Chair, because you have said that you think that because Dawn Betteridge is in the room, she's going to be taking us through the report. Actually, I believe that we have Nicola Hawayak online, and she is intending to take us through a few slides, but Dawn is, of course, here in case any technological problems arise. So over to Nicola.
Nicola,
Thank you.
morning. Lovely to see you on screen.
Thank you. My apologies for not being able to attend in person today. So, yes, I did prepare just a few slides, which just to sort of give an outline of the main detail of the full business case. So, I don't know if those are being presented or can be presented, please, by. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to clarify the ask of scrutiny. So as Councillor Butt-Phillips said, we came with outline business case both to scrutiny and executive earlier in the year. And what we're asking for now from scrutiny is to comment on the draft executive decision report and the full business case relating to the pay and grading review, and whether there's a need for any additional recommendations that should be made to the executive to consider. So could I have the next slide, please? Just a sort of high-level outline of the project. So as we've said, the business came to scrutiny in April. It was signed off by executive on the 12th of May. This work is part of the council's transformation, and it's aligned to the new people strategy for Somerset Council. The main reasons that we're undertaking this work. So firstly, it's about compliance with the council's obligations under the Equalities Act to ensure that our pay and reward arrangements are affordable, fair and equitable. It's also an opportunity for us to streamline and update related HR policies and processes. Very importantly, we're wanting to provide the council with a compelling reward offer in support of ongoing recruitment, retention and development of the workforce. We all know, I think, that there are a number of areas across the organisation where we do have challenges with recruitment. Some of those are national challenges, but also we want to ensure that the pay and reward for Somerset Council is market right and supports that ability for us to recruit and retain people within the organisation. We also want to review the job evaluation methodology. We've mentioned that obviously through LGR we had 5 councils that came together. We want to ensure that all jobs across the council have been scored and ranked, and making sure that we've got equal pay for work of equal value within the organisation. The work that we're doing was also supported by recommendations from both SIPFA and the peer challenge that we had to address these issues. It's the next natural step following LGR and the restructuring that we went through last year as an organisation. And the full business case does provide more detail on the deliverables within the project, the timeline and milestones, the resources that we're putting in place to deliver the project, governance, risks and budget. Could I have the next slide, please? So I just wanted to talk through the timeline in a bit more detail. We've said this is a project that will take up to 2 years to deliver. And I thought it would be useful just to sort of talk in some more detail around the work that we'll need to undertake to deliver a new pay and grading structure for the organisation. So we're at the stage now where we are working with Corn Ferry. So following the outline business case and the procurement process that we went through earlier in the year, Corn Ferry were our selected external partner. So we're working very closely with them, and they're sort of spending a lot of time working with stakeholders across the organisation so that we can really sort of understand the current position and start to develop options around which job evaluation schemes we'll use and the framework for our jobs, our sort of pay and grading structure moving forward. So we'll be looking at job families for the organisation, looking at sort of the profile for our our role profile format, and then obviously looking at sort of what role profiles we want to have within the organisation, with a view to being able to make decisions around all of those early next year. We are hoping to make the job evaluation decision sooner because there's some dependencies around that will help us move things forward more quickly. Then next year there'll be a lot of engagement, a lot more engagement with the organisation, so that we can actually write all the new role profiles for the organisation, evaluate all those role profiles, and then match all the jobs across the whole organisation to the role profiles that we've agreed for the organisation. This will give us the base then for us to be able to start modelling a new pay and grading structure. So once we've re-evaluated all the jobs, we'll be looking at sort of modelling the new pay and grading structure, looking at the pay policies that align with that pay and grading structure. And once we've come up with our preferred option around the pay and grading structure, we'll start formal consultation with the trade unions. We are already working very closely with the trade unions. We have a working group set up that we're meeting regularly with. We also have monthly joint consultative forum meetings, which enable us to undertake any sort of formal consultation with the trade unions. As part of the collective bargaining with the trade unions around our preferred option for the pay and grading structure, they will be wanting to sort of ballot their members, and so we need to make sure that we've got time within the timeline to allow for that to happen. And then obviously once we've reached a position where we have a collective agreement in place, we'll be getting into delivery and implementation of the new pay and grading structure. That will include a lot of work around systems, so we'll have to sort of reconfigure the whole of the council's SAP system so that it reflects the new pay and grading structure within the organisation. Could I have the next slide, please? In addition to the contractual terms and conditions, we are also looking at the wider non-contractual benefits that make up our reward package for all the staff who work in the council. So we've been doing some work on looking at our current offer and doing benchmarking against other organisations. We've got some really good information that came in from the recent staff survey. We're also undertaking staff engagement meetings, and as part of that, we are also asking people specifically around what they would value as part of the wider benefits offer for staff, so that we can look to refresh the offer and be able to make sure that that is reflecting what staff will value within the organisation. I'll talk a bit more about governance when we get to the next slide, but we are making sure that we've got governance in place, both from member oversight, but also as part of the council's transformation through the Inspiring Innovation Board. And we also have a workforce transformation board set up around that. And then comms and engagement is going to be absolutely crucial for this project. So again, we're working very closely with the comms team to make sure that we've got a very clear narrative. We're able to communicate to all groups of staff across the whole council right throughout the programme. So that work is underway as well. Could I have the next slide, please? So just a little bit more about the governance. Obviously, we're coming now with the full business case and seeking endorsement from executive around the full business case, which includes the detail on the project plan, the decisions, the risks, issues, budget implications. And then what we're intending is for the member oversight to be through the HR committee from January, which is obviously a cross-party committee, and that will enable us to ensure that members are updated and informed around the project as it progresses. We're also intending to undertake some online briefings for all members so that they can be clear about what the project is delivering and have the opportunity to ask questions. And then the final sign-off will be through the pay policy statement, which will be February 2027 for the new pay and grading structure. As I mentioned, we have the Inspiring Innovation Board for the council's wider transformation. So we'll be reporting regularly through that board and seeking any sort of endorsement of decisions that we'll need to make within the project as it progresses. Any non-key or key decisions will be made through the chief executive. And then our monthly Workforce Transformation Board will ensure that we are regularly monitoring, reviewing progress and addressing any sort of risks and issues as those are arising so that we can make sure that they're supported and dealt with swiftly. Could I have the next slide, please? There's a lot more detail around the risks, both within the report and within the business case document. But these are the 8 key risks that we've identified with the project. And these are the risks that we'll be reporting regularly through IdeaGen, subject to endorsement of the report and business case from executive. Next slide, please. And then the final sort of area I just wanted to sort of give some focus to is around the budget and the financials. We already have agreement for up to 3 million for the project costs. These are one-off costs, and these are this is the money that will be used to fund the external partner, dedicated project resources. This is a big project, so we need to make sure that in addition to people within the council who are not dedicated to the project, but we do have some resources focused on delivering within the timeframes that we're aiming for. We've also got budget growth of 7 million that's been made within the general fund within the MTFP from 2027-28, and then rising to 14 million in 28-29. The reason that we're looking to sort of have additional costs around pay bill taken account of within the MTFP is if we want to be in line with the market, we are expecting through the modelling that there will be an increase in our ongoing pay bill costs. Just to note that the business case will be updated. There is a table within the business case that stated the MTFP increase from 26-27, but that will be amended within the final report. So that's just some headlines, and then happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Is there anything you want to conclude with, Councillor Philip? No, thank you. And Officer Bettridge doesn't either. So in that case, ladies and gentlemen, over to you for points and questions. Councillor Lovell, you're the first to catch my eye.
Done well this morning. Thank you. Just as risks is a key part of this, and I think I can home in on it. I'm not an HR person, but what are the sort of the nuts and bolts of issues that could be faced? I don't want to preempt Korn Ferry doing, because that's what they do. But what likely to see some balancing exercises between somebody being paid this, somebody being paid that. We may have to be looking at cutting down the number of people that we have in a particular area, but at the same time with sort of trying to focus on the fact that we've got to become competitive. So my question is really, at what point will the nuts and bolts actually dealing with current imbalances kick in? Sorry if that's a nebulous question, but it's just kind of trying to get a feel when it gets a bit gritty.
Okay, thank you. Nicola.
We'll be monitoring all the risks throughout the programme. So the implementation won't take place, or will be sort of from April 2027. But we'll be managing and monitoring risks throughout the whole of the programme. So obviously we'll be managing and dealing with any issues as they arise through the programme. So it will be ongoing, and as we start to get into the detail and evaluating the jobs and doing the pay modelling next year, that's when we'll have more visibility around the impact of proposals that we're pulling together.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, I had some strange noise going on there. Thank you, Nicola. A couple of things that I was interested in, just wondered if you could answer. With regard to the unions, obviously it's going to be really important that everyone's working together on whatever the suggestions are. I don't know what proportion of Somerset Council are within a union. I wondered if you have that figure, and whether you know whether some directorates are more heavily unionised than other directorates. Just trying to get a feel for where the impact of the unions might come in and have the greatest concerns, I suppose, or, you know, as to whether they're on board or not. So that's question number one. The second was, obviously, you say the overall cost budget will probably go up. And I'm just trying to get a feel for how many people, because obviously it is going to be concerning for people, how many people may feel they are at risk of being downgraded, or you know, if you've got this idea already that it's going to go up, you must have some sense of where the balance tips in terms of extra money being required for some and less for other roles. And just wondering how many people could potentially be looked at being impacted in a negative way. Obviously, that's what the work and the project is going to do overall. But I think from the statement you said, I got the feel that you had some inkling as to where that's at. Obviously, I don't know what all the discrepancies are across the organisation between different district gradings that have come in and council gradings that have come in. But just wondering, you know, if you could give a bit more meat on the bones of sort of how many people are going to be concerned, I guess, really.
So in response to the first question, we don't hold that information anymore in terms of the number of trade union membership, because membership fees are not all paid through sort of payroll deductions, which they were previously. So we don't have the figures for the size of the membership. I don't know whether Dawn has got any other intel that sort of informs around that, but that information is not something we hold at the moment. In terms of the impact on people and sort of the cost, it really is too early for us to say. So when we do the modelling around the new pay and grading structure, we'll look at it from a number of different perspectives. So the likelihood is that we'll start off with zero cost impact modelling, and then we'll look at what impact that would actually have on staff once we've done the re-evaluation of our roles. And then obviously we'll look at different models to show you know, different scenarios. So it's definitely too early for us to be able to make any determination around the level of impact and the nature of the impact on our staff, and that will be something that we'll be looking very closely at when we get into the modelling next year.
Yeah, I don't know if I misheard, but it seemed that you, from memory, I recall you said that the overall budget cost of staffing will probably go up.
So we've made an allowance for an increase in the MTFP because that is the expected outcome and based on the process that other councils have gone through. But in terms of the actual impact on staff, it's definitely too early for us to say sort of how they will be impacting the detail around that.
So just coming back on the union thing, I'm a bit perturbed to know you don't know how many staff are within a union, within the organisation, because if we don't know that, how can we know what the impact of union support or not will be?
Sorry,
Officer Bettridge, looks as though you might have an answer.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair.
So if anyone didn't hear that, the new iPhone has arrived.
For some horrible reason, I thought that was me.
My life is so much richer for knowing that. Officer Bettridge.
Now, I just want to reiterate what Nicola has said, actually. It does seem very strange that we don't have the union membership numbers. We do ask our trade unions to disclose their membership numbers, but they choose not to. We do know that Unison has the largest representation across our workforce. In terms of what percentage of our workforce are covered within union membership, we honestly cannot say. We could say how many people are paying their subscriptions through the payroll, but the vast majority of people now pay directly to trade unions through a direct debit arrangement, and therefore it would be, unless the trade unions are prepared to share that information, we simply don't have it. What we do have is a national and a local, obviously, agreement for national pay bargaining. So we do business through our trade unions. So irrespective of the size of their membership, that is how we would need to negotiate any changes with pay and terms conditions with our workforce. And therefore, all of the Green Book unions are going to be very much included, but we do have to be mindful of schools as well, because some of the school staff are also employees of the local authority. So we will be clearly working with trade unions across all elements of recognised trade unions for the staff that are in scope. We will continue to ask them if they'd like to share their size of their trade union membership, but at the moment they have declined. In terms of the cost budget that you've mentioned, Councillor, the reason that we've put a provision in the MTFP is it's a prudent provision. We know that our salaries from the work that we've done over the last 18 months on our pay and grading structure are not market right. We are paying over 1,000 recruitment and retention allowances to staff to retain them and to attract them to work at Somerset Council currently. That is a significant pull on the pay bill, and services are having to hold positions vacant to pay for the additional cost of recruitment and retention allowances in many cases across the organisation. We know that we have adopted the former Somerset County Council's pay and grading structure, and that was last reviewed in 2014 and last had a fundamental review in 2004. So we know that because of local government reorganisation and the fact that we have now restructured and we have the data correct and our structures correct on our establishment, now is the perfect time, and we have that now burning platform to review our pay and grading, and that's why we are really pushing it to do that now. However, it will be a decision that will be made outside of the programme once we've done the pay modelling about what members wish to do in terms of what pay model that they accept. If we go to a cost neutral pay model, then clearly there will be implications on our staff. If we invest in the pay model to try and bring our pay and grading structures up to what I believe is sustainable for our new unitary authority, then we believe that there will need to be an injection of budget into the pay bill to support that. However, those decisions will be made, as Nicola outlined, later on in the programme. They're going to have to fit with, obviously, the financial constraints of the council, but we have made that prudent provision, so it is in the MTFP if we decide that that is the preferred model that we wish to pursue. And obviously we've got the section 151 in the room who may want to speak more eloquently than I can about that provision in the MTFP. Thank you, Chair.
For the benefit of members then, page 37, 12.5.
Got it now, thank you. So one is to make sure that we've got the protection of equal pay by making sure we have a valid job evaluation scheme that's applied consistency. Secondly is to make sure that we attract people and retain people into the council because our pay grades are attractive and people want to come and stay. And thirdly, that we do manage within an affordable pay envelope, and that remains the challenge of how we do those last two in particular together. And we'll continue to do that through the pay modelling that both Nicola and Dawn have spoken about.
Right, thank you. So the next question is from Councillor Trimnell.
Nope, I'm all right now. So I was going to ask about that, but I think we've exhausted that one. So I think that's just something that now we need to keep an eye on, because the last thing we want to do is pay £3 million for somebody to tell us that we've got to pay many, many millions more pounds than we can afford. So that's something that will need to be monitored, I'm sure. So my next question was about, we've got on page 28, paragraph 8.2, but actually reasonably throughout this paper, talk about equal pay risks, and I wondered if you would be able to outline the risks and tell us appear to be projected as going forward and not current. Okay, so what I want to know is, are we at risk of any sort of claims or any issues currently, or are you just foreseeing that that might be something going forward? And it shows on page 33 that our risk of 15 is falling to a 10, depending on the work that we do, obviously. What are those implications if, you know, even for a 10, what would that mean?
Councillor Buck-Philip, do you want to respond to that?
Just to one point, and I'm sure that either Dawn or Nicola will respond to the equal pay point. I just want to make it really, really clear that the money that we're spending on the programme, which is budgeted for up to 3 million, is not money that we are spending on an external consultant. An element of that will be, but that's not the, I just want to be really, really clear to everyone, that is not the cost of what we are spending on someone outside. That is the overall cost, including internal resource.
Thank you. That's a helpful clarification. So who would like to respond to Officer Bettridge, please?
I'll start off, then I'll hand over to Nicola as the report author. But in terms of the consultant, just to follow on what Councillor Buck-Philip has just said, who's absolutely correct. I think it's really important to understand that Corn Ferry, as our external reward partner, is not leading this programme. We are leading this internally. So I'm the senior responsible officer for the programme. There will be very close oversight of this programme internally by all of the statutory officers and the Inspiring Innovation Board. And the reason that we require support from an external partner is because of the expertise and the capacity that they can bring to this project for us to deliver this project as fast as we can. I appreciate the timescales look very elongated. Hopefully we've explained the reason for that. If we can do it quicker, we will do, but some of it is outside of our control in terms of how long it will take to get agreements and the consultation and the negotiations completed with our trade union colleagues. So I think it's really important that we understand that Corn Ferry is there to advise us. They will help with doing the pay modelling. They absolutely will not be telling us what we should be doing, but they will be there to ensure that we have done our due diligence and that we have done everything we possibly can to mitigate risks to Somerset Council for future risks of equal pay claims. In terms of equal pay risks, we don't have any current claims that we have received in Somerset Council or any legacy claims that we are dealing with. The reason that we are prioritising this programme is that the longer we go away from vesting day, particularly with the pressure that we have to look at doing things like recruitment and retention allowances to attract and retain staff, the higher the risk that there may be that we would receive equal pay claims. I'm sure all of you are aware of, you know, from the national news stories of the size of the millions of pounds that other authorities have had to pay out in equal pay claims. We are actively looking to mitigate all risks around equal pay and have been doing so since vesting day. We believe that this programme is another key mitigation for the council in terms of if we were to receive any claims, then we have a very clear programme plan and commitment from members and the council of how we want to address our current pay and grading structure and mitigate the risk. So going forward, as I say, there are not any claims, but that doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't receive them in the future, and we may still receive them even if we do this programme. But what this programme will do is it will reduce the size of the risk that any claims would be successful. And the reason that we're working so closely with the trade unions is to ensure that we try and do this through agreement with the trade unions, which will again mitigate risk. Nicola, is there anything that you'd like to add against that? In addition to that, sorry.
The only thing I would add is that obviously with the 5, staff from the 5 district councils currently have TUPE protection. That TUPE protection does also help mitigate against any equal pay risk, but that protection the protection against the risk will diminish over time, which is another reason why we want to sort of prioritise this work around the pay and grading project. So TUPE does offer us protections, but it won't offer us those protections forever.
Thank you very much. Mr. Heafy.
And I'm not going to add anything to Somerset's specific situation. Dawn and Nicola have taken us through that, but the general risk is one I want to bring to your attention. The risk of equal pay claims is high across the sector at the moment. Birmingham has been the most high profile of those. I was there at Birmingham. During my time there, we'd paid out not millions, but 1.2 billion in equal pay claims. That's equivalent to 4 years worth of Somerset's entire budget. Let's just get that in a scale. And Birmingham is only twice the size of Somerset, so it's a major problem. And has continued for many years. It started with dinner ladies, and yes, we can call them dinner ladies because the courts found that it was essentially a sex discrimination claim on a predominantly female workforce, and carried on with the waste workers, which was a predominantly male workforce. And so Birmingham's found itself in difficulty trying to resolve those issues, which is about ensuring that people of equal sized jobs are paid the same amount of money or within the same pay scale. That's what it's all about. So that is spread to Glasgow, which has got similar sized claims to Birmingham. Southampton have got it, and many others. And we do know in the private sector, some of the big supermarket chains, I believe Asda and Sainsbury's, are also facing very large claims as well. So they're very active. So we have to get this right. We have to protect ourselves by having a job evaluation scheme that is fit for purpose, that Corn Ferry have reviewed and said it's fit for purpose, negotiated ideally with the unions, who we hope will accept it. The unions will always have their favoured scheme. And we've got to press ahead on that. What we can't afford to do is get into a territory where we're putting ourselves at risk, where I would be having to set aside many, many tens of millions for a large equal pay claim. I don't want to get in that territory. I'm not in that territory now because we're not facing a large number of claims, but this piece of work is protecting us against one of the largest possible risks that we could face. And in Birmingham, by the way, it's not just the cost of it. The amount of management time that's been taken up on this has been absolutely phenomenal at all levels, including within the HR teams, and defending legal claims, many thousands of legal claims. I think Birmingham, when I left, had paid out 67,000 claims to people, sometimes 3 and 4 times over, because they couldn't nail the problem down. So, we've got to do everything we can to do this at the right pace, to be thorough and avoid that risk ever materialising in Somerset.
Thank you very much. Councillor Trimble, you just wanted to quickly come back to finish off your...
Well, I did have a second question. It was actually a second question, if that's okay, which I can roll. It's only ever so quick. I just noted that on page 37, paragraph 12.5, it said that we may be seeing a smaller, appropriately and fairly rewarded workforce. And I just wanted to ask, is that a way of suggesting that there may be either further redundancies or job roles not being filled as they become vacant?
There could be a number of outcomes to this, and I've said the modelling work will try to balance the need of pay and recruitment and retention needs to get people with appropriate skills into the right levels in the organisation, but also the affordable pay bill. And there's an extent to which we expect a lot of the gains here to be productivity gains, particularly as we link it to transformation and move into AI. Some of the more routine task work will be done by AI in the future, and that will free staff up to be more productive in some of the work we want them to be, which is about interpreting, understanding the data and using it in a different way. But we can't rule out that ultimately, depending on where that pay bill goes, we have to say that where vacancies arise, we may not fill them or may choose to have natural wastage in order that we get an overall smaller size of workforce in the long term. I think we wouldn't want to look at redundancies, either voluntary or compulsory, as a straight to measure. But equally, I think we have to accept that in a modern AI generated world and with the financial constraints we're under, we've got to do that balancing trick between retaining people, paying the right level, but actually what we can afford. So it may mean a smaller workforce in years to come.
Thank you very much. So just so members are aware, I've next got Councillor Hobhouse, then Councillor Filmer, then Councillor Osborne. If there's nobody else in the Councillor Stanton, and then I will ask Councillor Mansell to put his point. So we've got you, Councillor Mansell, just so you're aware of the fact. Councillor Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 questions. The first is that I would like confirmation that this programme is not going to affect the changes that are happening in planning, because they are very important that they get put through quite quickly. as all the members who are on the planning committee will know and understand. My second question is two parts. The first is, how many staff have we got from agencies, and what is going to be the saving if we can bring in-house the proportion of the agency staff, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Who would like to field that one?
I'll
Officer Bettridge.
start, Chair. Oh, sorry, Chris, did you want to?
Yeah. If I may, I'll just make a comment on the point around planning. So this will touch every job role across the organisation. It is a top to bottom review of the pay and grading structure in recognition that the current schemes aren't giving us the outcomes we would expect and aren't giving us the necessary protections from the equal pay claims that have just been talked about. In terms of planning roles specifically, we have already applied those recruitment and retention allowances, so those will continue until the scheme is completed. We've deliberately put them in place, so they were for 18 months, I think it was, at the time we signed them up. So they are already in place and we are using those as part of the recruitment process at the moment. So I just want to give committee assurance that it's not something to come, it's something that has already been applied.
Thank you very much. Officer Bettridge.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair. In terms of how many staff we have from agencies, we still have quite a high proportion of agency interim and consultants working across the organisation. In terms of the exact figures, I can take that away and bring that back to the committee. Obviously that changes on a weekly, sort of monthly basis, but we still have quite a high provision. That is reducing currently because we've been working very, very hard on recruiting to the permanent posts that were left vacant post the restructure. So the more that we fill our permanent establishment with people on the books, then the more we can reduce the need for agency workers. However, there will always be a need for a contingent workforce to help us with the extra capacity and capability where we don't need to employ people on longer term contracts in the council, or where we can't attract people on fixed term contracts to go onto the books. So we're working on that literally as we speak and have been doing so for the last 18 months to reduce that agency pressure. What I would say about our agency bill, though, is that we don't generally have extra budgets to fund agency staff. So there isn't an extra pool of money that if we reduce agency, that won't necessarily mean that we will make savings. What we are doing is we'll be reducing the cost of agency and transferring that into the provision that we have for staffing on our permanent establishment. So as we reduce our agency, we're likely to increase our permanent headcount, but there's no overall saving on agency spend because there is no separate agency budget. We have one staffing budget. So where we have to bring in an agency person, if they are going to cost us more than it would normally cost us to put somebody onto the payroll, then we may have to hold another position vacant to fund those extra costs, if that sort of makes sense. So what we're looking at doing is a cost reduction of agency and interim workers, but there won't be a budgetary saving by doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butt-Phillip.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to come back on Councillor Hobhouse's point about planning and just make it really, really clear this will affect planning. What we have at the moment is a situation where our pay structure does not sufficiently remunerate planning officers. We have put in place a temporary solution to that, but it is temporary and suboptimal. And what will happen through this process is making it permanent. And that is the idea, because we are using recruitment and retention allowances across the planning service at the moment, but they are by their nature temporary and imperfect. And this is to bring that into a permanent part of the pay structure, which will make it the very fact that that is a permanent uplift rather than a temporary one, which a recruitment and retention allowance one, will make it more competitive. I would hope it will make it easier to recruit. It will certainly not hurt.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand how you can't make a saving where the agency staff are somewhere around a third more expensive than a permanent staff, and unless you have kept other jobs not fulfilled. And if that's the case, can we have the report about what is going on with the unfulfilled staff, if that makes sense?
Okay, I think that's a fair point. Officer Hall. Oh, Officer Hall and then Officer Heath.
Thank you. Yeah, it does take a moment to get your head around the idea that we're spending more on agency, but if we stopped doing that, we wouldn't make a saving. So I think the important thing to understand is that if we are overspending the budgets to agency staff and we remove those agency staff and make them permanent, then we'll spend less cash. But that's not the same as taking money out of the pre-agreed budget, because effectively we're overspending. And that overspend is either showing itself as an in-year pressure, or in some instances, we are having to hold other roles vacant within the organisation to pay for the excess costs associated with agency. So it does take a moment to differentiate between cash out the door versus the budget saving that would come back to us.
Officer Heafy.
And put another way then, so in the short term, directorates are having to hold vacancies in order to pay the additional cost of agency staff. So there is an impact on that workforce. In the long term, if we can get the people in, we'll be paying them higher rates anyway, so the pay bill will go on some of those higher rates. But then we can start to fill some of those other vacant posts as we go through that. Now that assumes there is a market for people who want to come and work, and there are many jobs, planning being one of them. I mean, my own is one of them as well. I have to say, I love being here as an interim, but I get 2 or 3 approaches every week from agencies to come and do similar roles, because there's a massive shortage of Section 151s around the country, and people have chosen to get out of permanent work and go into interim work. That's the nature of the world. So, each job and each requirement has to be assessed on its own merits. But the idea has to be that over time we move towards a permanent workforce. I'd love to get out of the organisation eventually and leave you with a permanent 151. That's the aim of where I need to get to. And we've got to have the same across the organisation, that same approach and attitude. But it does require paying the right levels that are going to attract people here on a permanent basis to want to come here and stay here. And that's just simply not the case at the moment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Filmer.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of queries, if I could, and a couple have already been addressed anyway. Just wanted to get it straight in my own mind that on page 54, it talks about 7.5 full-time equivalent officers coming into part of this process. I think from the answers we've had today, that's included within the 3 million budget that we've got set aside. So that's not additional, that is all part of it. I'm seeing nods on the screen, so thank you very much. I would like a little bit of clarity in terms of the 7 and 14 million pound we've got built in for the next couple of years, because obviously we're doing job evaluations, and I'd like to understand the balance between, are we doing job evaluations as to what is the job actually worth, or what can we afford the jobs to be evaluated at? So how blank sheet are we giving the evaluation? Is it being a sort of blue sky job evaluation and that is what it's worth, or is it that's what it's worth in the budget that we've got, so we've got a sort of cut a coat?
Okay, Mr. Heafy.
HR colleagues may want to come in behind me on this one, but in a sense, there's 2 different exercises going on. Job evaluation is about sizing one job against another, the relative size of one job against each other, using factors like the number of staff managed, the number of budgets managed, the antisocial hours. There's a whole range of factors go into sizing a job up. From that, you can rank everybody in the organisation from top to bottom. Chief executive is usually going to come out as the top, as you'd expect, and there'll be others come out lower down. And that then sets that grade. And what we do then is separate that list of people into bandings to say those people fall into that band, those into that band. And then the second part of the exercise is then attaching a pay scale to those bandings to make sure that they are attractive. So the 2 things are going on hand in hand, but one is about protection from claims that the jobs of equal size should be paid equal amounts. That's the first part of it, the job evaluation. The pay and grading is setting the affordable pay bill then that we can afford to pay within the budget that's available to us. And that's when I talk about in the short term we get productivity increases, which is great, but in the long term it may mean a smaller workforce, a more agile workforce, a workforce that's more technology dependent. that may just be a result of that because we only have so much money in the pay bill. So does that give you an explanation of how the thing works? It's a little bit complicated, but think of it as those two elements. I always think in my mind it's easy to separate them out and think of them in that way.
Thank you. If I could have a couple of final ones, if I can. There's on page 56, there's a table 5 which talks about there being no impact on staffing. And I wondered, I might be totally misinterpreting that table. I didn't quite understand what that table was. And the final question was a question relating to TUPE. We heard that obviously a lot of the district staff have come across on TUPE terms. When this evaluation is done, how does that affect their roles going forward? Are they still covered by TUPE protection, or the fact that we've re-evaluated everything, does that cut across it?
Right, would Officer Bettridge? Oh, no, Nicola.
Sorry, I was going to pass to Nicola. Thank you, Nicola.
That's okay. So in relation to the first question around, I think it's section 5 within the report, the impact on staffing there is relating to any restructuring and reduction of staff as a direct result of this project. So that's why we're saying that there isn't any direct impact on staffing leading to a potential reduction in funded establishment posts. So although we've talked about wider transformation may sort of lead to changes, this project in itself won't directly lead to a reduction of staff. In relation to the second question then around the TUPE protections, those TUPE protections will remain in place. There are legal reasons why you can look to make changes to terms and conditions, and we'd have to sort of comply with those legal reasons, and we'll be getting all the advice that we need around that throughout the project. But our hope is that through a collective agreement, we will be able to put in place a set of terms and conditions that can be applied to all staff, but that would have to be done through either a collective agreement or through individual agreement of contracts with staff. So it's not something that we can impose. It is something that would have to be through agreement, and it would have to meet the legal requirements as well.
You okay, Councillor Filmer?
Just a quick query on that. If any member of staff ends up with a re-evaluation that ends up being worse than their TUPE terms, why would they agree to accept that?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly why we'll be looking at different modelling and looking at the impact on staff. But it's not just about pay. We'll be looking at the wider contractual terms and conditions as well. So if we're able to implement through a collective agreement with the trade unions, there may be some adverse impacts around certain terms and conditions, but we'd be certainly aiming and hoping for the overall benefit, for there to be an overall benefit for any staff who are impacted by a change in their sort of pay in terms and conditions.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. I think some of my potential points have been addressed, but I still have some residual ones. How will the employment rights legislation, what is the risk and mitigation as to how that may or may not impact on the work that we're doing? That's one question. My second question is just for clarification. I understand that future oversight now is going to be done through the HR committee. So are any other reports on this subject going to be coming to corporate HR? And also as well in terms of equalities assurance, when are you looking to publish your equality impact assessments, and will members be able to review those? Terms as well, because we're talking about pay and condition, but it's not clear whether you're going to be looking at harmonising redundancy terms, because those also varied between the between the legacy councils. And the other question I have, and I'm not sure whether I should raise it here or after the next item, is the risk of overload, because you have two major programmes running together. You've got your transformation phase 2, you've got this one. Both of them are pulling on basically the same corporate leadership team, exec leadership team, plus HR, plus finance, particularly finance. What is the risk of overload causing delays and issues for you? And how are you going to mitigate and manage that risk? Because it is, as far as I can see, quite a major risk, especially when you add in as well all the other things that are going on.
Right, thank you. Who would like to respond to that in the first instance? Officer Bettridge.
As I'm in the room, I think it's only fair. And Nicola, do jump in if there's anything that I don't cover. So in terms of the first question, employment rights legislation, clearly we're looking at the impact of that. You know, it's still a moving feast at the moment in terms of what's definitely going to come in next year. But our HR policy team are keeping a close watching eye on that, as are obviously our trade union colleagues and as are myself and Nicola. So we will make sure that that everything is aligned. I think one of the big changes next year is it's likely to become illegal for councils to be able to dismiss and re-engage staff on new terms and conditions of employment. That is a strategy that we've never preferred to follow in Somerset Council since vesting day. I think once you know that has serious implications on the culture of the organisation and the trust that we have with our workforce and our trade union relationships. So that hasn't been a strategy that we're looking at, and that's why we are working with trade unions to look at collective bargaining, that negotiation, and to try and get a collective agreement. However, if we don't succeed on that, then we would want to try and still implement a new Somerset Council terms and conditions and pay structure. And for staff that are on TUPE terms and conditions, then that may mean that they have, if we cannot get something collectively through the trade unions, is that we will need to see individually whether they would see it as a compelling alternative to their current pay and terms conditions. And obviously that is a more complex and a much longer piece of work in order for us to do that. But looking at other councils that have gone through LGR, that, you know, where they haven't been successful in getting collective agreements, you know, they're still working on that sometimes 15, 20 years down the line. So it is a very long-term piece of work if we're unable to get that agreement, but that is the direction that we're planning on taking. But we have no strategy, you know, to kind of that the employment rights bill, when that comes in, there shouldn't be any conflicts with it. We'll make sure everything's aligned. In terms of bringing any further reports to scrutiny, we're actually recommending that that oversight is done through the HR committee. If scrutiny do want us to bring back any updates, there will clearly be updates through the Inspiring Innovation Programme. This is one of the projects within the Inspiring Innovation Programme, so it's part of the Inspiring Innovation portfolio. So yes, there will be multiple change and transformation projects happening in parallel. This is obviously a major one, and although that we've been talking about this for probably the best part of a year, it's absolutely aligned with the wider portfolio that we're working on with Newton, and it will be aligned with the cultural change elements of that programme as well. In terms of EIAs, when they are available, as we do specific pieces of work or as we're doing certain elements or milestones on this programme, the EIAs will be put together right at the beginning to help inform our decision making. And again, they will all be available. So we'll be providing those through to the HR committee, so members will be able to see them should they wish. In terms of harmonisation, because of TUPE protection, our objective is not to just harmonise, because obviously that would be directly related to the transfer and that would be illegal for us to do that. So what we are trying to do is to create a compelling contract of employment for all Somerset council staff. So what we're looking at is, you know, for the council that we want to be in the future, to attract and retain the very best people to Somerset, what is going to be our employer value proposition, our EVP? At the moment, we know that we're not as competitive as we would like to be. So through this programme, we will look at what the art of the possible is, and hopefully that will be compelling enough for trade unions to also wish to support a collective agreement in terms of how we implement it. That may involve looking at things such as the the current redundancy terms conditions. At the moment, Somerset Council has adopted the previous county council's redundancy terms, which does not have an additional multiplier that some of the former district councils currently benefit from. If we were to change that, that would be an added cost to the council, but it will all be looked at in the round. But there isn't really an intention to harmonise as such. In terms of a risk of overload, I think this is probably one of the most important conversations we'll end up having in the next 12 months. I'm having multiple conversations at the moment with my service director colleagues and with other stakeholders across the whole organisation, and it's coming through very, very clear in the staff engagement groups that we're holding at the moment, that there are some really hot spots around the organisation, whereas, you know, post restructure where we still have vacancies, you know, there is a real sense that there is a huge amount of pressure on our staff and on our managers at the moment. And as we continue to do more change and transformation, we have to be really alive to particularly what I'd call the corporate ask on our managers. So we are very aware and very sensitive of the workload that they have to do their day job, and then the additional sort of demands that are coming onto managers as well, and how we best support and develop our managers to cope with that and our workforce. And that's why part of the transformation funding is to bring in additional capacity into the council where we have skill gaps. But we're not going to need them long term. So we can use that 3 million, which is the resources for this programme, to ensure that we backfill our very best people that are going to be working on this programme internally, and that we can continue to support the council through the day-to-day services that we still need to deliver. So I think the risk of overload and burnout is a very real one across the organisation. It's definitely something that we're hearing loud and clear, and it's something that all of us are very alive to. I don't think that there's any easy answer to it, because we are going to keep going through a considerable period of change and transformation, and some people will, you know, not choose to want to be working in that environment, and it will continue to impact on our turnover. But we will support our staff and our managers, especially through our cultural change programme and the leadership development work that will be coming, that Newton are supporting us with, to ensure that we can provide as much support as we can through what will continue to be quite a turbulent and challenging period for our staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, just to come back, thank you for that answer, because it's certainly, I suspect, one of our biggest risks is that overload, that we are running two very big critical programmes simultaneously, and it's how you handle that risk. There's also a risk to workforce morale that we've more or less been transforming or transitioning since day one. Don't forget, we had the initial staff structure, which then led to the more compact structure we have now. That seems to have got forgotten about. That will have clearly impacted on staff capacity, because again, how are you going to prioritise which takes priority if there is a conflict point? Is it going to be the HR and the pay and grading that gets the resources to do their work, or is it going to be transformation? You know, there's a lot on that. I think that is, to me, that is a real hotspot and a real weak point potentially. And what's going to be plan B if we do get delays as a result of some of this? And also in terms of the pay and grading, that is going to come in slap bang when we have an election, and that could again potentially risk delay. So what are the plan B? What's plan B? The contingencies for dealing with the possibility that things might not go as we'd like.
Right, so just on that specific, Mr. Heafy.
So as Dawn has said, this is one programme within the transformation programme. It's not two programmes, it's one of the projects. And the transformation programme itself will consist of upwards of 30 to 40 or possibly more projects, all with competing demands. So we know that's going to be a challenge. We're not the first authority to go through this. Many have done it, and many manage those carefully. And I won't go into the theory of programme management today, but having robust programme management in place and monitoring all of these on a regular basis, watching which project is slipping, prioritising and making sure that extra resources are brought in is a critical part of that. As you know, we've set a return on investment of 3 to 1. And that means that what we are doing is putting investment in where it's needed to backfill positions, as Dawn said, or sometimes if the staff don't have the experience or skills, to bring people in for a few months to put us on the right track and then transfer those skills back into the organisation. So the money is there to provide support. Probably more of a challenge for people at ELT and CLT level who've got to cope with. There's not going to be any more of us, so that's a challenge. But we manage that within the overall demands of the programme. And as I say, we're not the first authority to go through this. We do have the funds to do it, but we need to have that regular programme monitoring to make sure we can see where the pinch points are. And if any project, including this one, is starting to get behind, the question becomes, what do we need to do now with further investment to put it back on track to achieve its objectives? But that will be the same across all the programme, because it's important that we deliver the transformation programme as a whole.
Okay. Thank you very much. While we're at this point, can I just then ask members, are you satisfied with the governance arrangements as outlined on page 27 and on page 51? Essentially that the HR committee will be providing member oversight, but that the day-to-day control, so to speak, will lie with the Inspiring Innovation Board.
That's a point I wanted to ask a question about.
Fire away then, Councillor Stanton.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments first, and then I'll come to that. I mean, good work generally, a very tight programme. I think it will put a big load on the HR team. Worth just reminding everybody that when you think about attracting people to jobs and retaining people, the principal motivators are not pay and conditions. They're hygiene factors. You know, they need to be good enough. But what motivates people to join and stay in an organisation, according to all the surveys over decades, is the physical conditions that they work in, how nice the offices are, and so on. And nowadays, the balance between freedom to work at home and freedom to come into the office, and very important, the quality of their management and leadership, whether they feel they're properly managed, the opportunity to progress, and so on. Those are the things that really motivate people. And clearly, in a changed situation where we've put so many bodies together into one that all had different cultures and principles, we're not at the optimal point for that yet, and that's where we have to get to. So that's why culture is talked about a lot, because it's all better, everything comes in the end from the values we adopt. So just remind everybody of that. Have to get the balance of the jobs right size, right relationships. You have to get the pay levels right. That's a market question. And then all the details about TUPE and so on as well. But it is really the way the place feels that makes a difference, and makes people come and stay. Now, firstly, I had a question about report length. I think I raised this at the last meeting. I mean, this is an unusual set of reports in that they're only 100 pages, but it's still too long. And there's too much repetition. And for instance, page 26 and 46, you have exactly the same chart. One in the appendix, one in the executive summary. Lots of the text is repeated. Can we please just deal with that by having a reference in the one bit of the document to the other bit, rather than sitting, so that we feel as if there's a bit less to read, even though it's still a lot. Right, on page 51, this is the point that relates to the governance, Mr. Chairman. The pay and reward working group with Corn Ferry in the middle. The question is there an elected member representation on there? I mean, I would assume it's Councillor Butt Philip, but that's the question.
Good question. Is there one?
No, there is not an elected member who sits on that group.
Should there be?
Should be, in my view.
It was a rhetorical question, really.
Would you like me to respond, Chair?
Yes, please. Yes.
So the the pay and reward working group there is very much the that's the operational working group that are sort of working through the project in order that we can reach the milestone. So it's not a decision-making group in any way. That is the working group that is setting up all the meetings with the stakeholders, making sure that we're sort of delivering what we need. So obviously, as lead member, Councillor Butt-Phillip will be regularly updated, and as we've suggested, the ongoing governance will be through the HR committee, but that's very much an operational working group.
So where does an elected member come in then? A transformation board that has an elected member on?
There are no elected members on the Inspiring Innovation Board. There are elected members on the Inspiring Innovation Assurance Board, and although that's not referenced, I would not be surprised if some of this came to the Assurance Board as well as the HR committee. But of course, outside of this, as has been referenced, I will be updated on a regular basis. But if members wish to make the point that they want elected members to be engaged at other points of the process, that's a decision this committee is free to make.
I'm conscious that I may be upsetting Councillor Butt-Phillip by threatening to add to his workload, but, but it feels to me as if there ought to be an elected member somewhere in there.
I must admit, Councillor Stanton, that is the one thing that really concerns me about page 51 and page 27. It's very much that elected members are sort of being told about what's happening rather than having any direct opportunity to intervene at an early enough stage.
Not from the HR committee.
Well, even then, it's, I think, rather far down the process. A HR committee will be consulted on in relation to the proposed scale. So to what degree do the HR committee really have the opportunity to intervene, and is it early enough in the process? I ask the question.
Stuff tends to come to us late to HR. I'm on HR committee as well, so I'm not sure that's a good enough control.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we could do, just as a suggestion, is ensure that we reference on the governance document the Inspiring Innovation Assurance Board. That does meet monthly. This is one of the projects within the Inspiring Innovation Programme, and that's where member oversight is had. So what we can do is to make sure that we're bringing regular updates through to that group. That will give sort of independent, I think Councillor Butt-Phillip is involved in that Assurance Board already. And you're the chair. Apologies. So we've got that link there. The HR committee is quarterly, so it will cover it monthly at the Inspiring Innovation Assurance Board, quarterly at HR committees. And what we've also committed to doing is to putting on informal engagement sessions for members, where there is a more informal opportunity for members to do more of a Q&A, where we can give a regular update of the progress of the programme, and that there can be a conversation, because some of this is quite complex, and what we want to do is to bring members with us on this journey, which is quite considerable, so there are no surprises. And actually that conversation across all members, should they wish to join those briefings, was the same approach that we used during the restructuring programme last year. We held them sort of early evenings. We had quite a few members attend them, and we found it a very valuable two-way opportunity to be kind of challenged on and held to account for the programme, but also just to have that very informal opportunity to do some engagement. But it is obviously a member decision whether or not you feel that that is sufficient. I would prefer not to involve members with the joint working group. It's a very operational group. It would not be the best use of an exec member's time on that group. And so if the Assurance Board and the HR committee wasn't sufficient, we'd welcome a steer on that we can put forward to the executive on the 5th of November for consideration.
Thank you. So 5.2 then, it's a little bit of on page 27, a little bit of a question of nomenclature, because it does become, I think, very confusing for most of us if we have an Inspiring Innovation Board, an Inspiring Innovation Assurance Board, the executive leadership team, and the executive leads. It is quite confusing, and it's bad enough for us as members. It must be worse for anybody else outside of the organisation to understand exactly what is going on here. And we do need to, I think, have absolute clarity, both for members and the people that we represent. Mr. Heafy.
And it's for you as a group to decide on what you want. But from 44 years experience in local government, the generally accepted practice is that members set the policy, the strategy, the programmes of work. Officers deliver that through officer bodies, and that members then hold officers to account for that delivery through assurance boards. So we're trying to adopt a fairly standard process here that we see throughout government, which doesn't involve members in the day-to-day operational detail, but does involve members in holding officers to account and getting assurance that the programmes of work that we say are being delivered, that you've authorised, are being delivered according to schedule, and actions that we should be taking if they're not.
Which I think we all accept. Entirely agree with. I think my point, as much as anything else, is clarity. Yes, exactly that. Clarity of the way in which this process is being expressed, so that we all understand quite clearly, as well as making sure that we do have member involvement at an early enough stage to be able to offer that degree of oversight and nudge if necessary. So I think I'm getting the sense that that can be written in now into the governance structure line. That would be very helpful. Yes, Vice Chairman.
Thank you. I'm not sure what that was at all.
I hope it wasn't a comment on the speed at which we're conducting this process.
The clock. Who knows? Anyway, Theo, can you just explain the assurance board and who's on that and what its function exactly is?
Sarah Scrutiny is gesticulating wildly. I think she wants to take that.
Well,
I mean, it has been covered before, and I think it may be covered in the next paper.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, sorry, Councillor Buckford, to jump in, but in the next paper, we've actually got a diagram on page 68 of your reports pack, and then appended to that, we've actually got the terms of reference for the Assurance Board and the Inspiring Innovation Board, which we can pick up in the next item, if that's helpful.
Right. Unless there are other members in the room wishing to ask a question, I'll now go to the members online, the first of whom is Councillor Mansell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, a comment, just a brief one, and really to support a point that Councillor Stanton made in regard to attracting and retaining staff, and that there are other factors that are important, which I think were well summarised. But it's sort of in general, having a good and interesting job to do is, something that many well seek. I feel a little concerned. Pay is a factor. I'm not denying that for a moment, but let's remember there's other reasons that attract people, especially to public service. That's just a comment, though. In relation to some of the discussion earlier, I have to say I felt rather concerned to hear that how many staff are on pay retentions. It surprised me to hear that there were over 1,000 staff who currently have additional retention payments to them. I think it would be helpful. Could I request that we be told the size in total of that retention cost? And I partly ask it because I have a feeling it could be an indication of what costs might come out of this programme, at least to some level, especially if that's a very high total. So that's a request, if we could be told that, please. I also have a sort of question around the affordability, which was touched on earlier, but I wish to just try and sort of understand that a little bit more. Now, I think and I've also got a couple of inconsistencies just to point out, but really my question is about trying just to understand what may be affordable, and also how this is addressed in the risks. Now I noted, because I had this concern and was wondering about it, I looked at the risk on page 33, and I don't think the risk, we've got a risk on affordability of proposed solutions. It looks to me that the mitigation doesn't address that. The mitigation actually talks about the pay bill costs for the programme, whereas to me it should be addressing what are the project costs. And as has been made clear, the two are quite different. So we've had an indication that the provision in the budget for the future is £7 million to 14 million, rising to £14 million. So my question is that is that an indication of what is regarded as affordable, or is there any other indication? The fact that it's been put in the budget suggests that it might be an indication, which I was wishing to check. And then just quickly, and really these are inconsistencies which may need to, you may wish to address before it goes to executive. Maybe comment now, but don't have to. Now let's see, page 37, and this point's been noted, but it links to another one. It says that the programme may result, right at the bottom of the page, may result in a smaller, appropriately and fairly rewarded workforce in the future. And again, this is linked to the question of affordability, but it suggests that to be affordable, we may need to have less staff. So that's said on page 37. Then if you look on page 56, it says something different. So, and then, or it appears to, page 56, in the part of the table 5, it says there is no direct impact on staffing leading to a potential reduction in funded establishment posts, which seems to conflict with the bit on page 37. I suspect, well, I wonder, what may end up being correct, but it doesn't look as though it's well addressed in the report, and those two statements are inconsistent. But my real question is about affordability and what sort of guide we can be given to that, and whether the 7 to 14 million is a guide.
Right, thank you, Councillor Mansell. Mr. Heafy.
The 7 to 14 million is a provision, 7 million in 26-27, rising to and a further 7 million in 27-28, which is then baked in perpetuity. That is not agreed yet. I mean, every year we'll review that in line with your budget assumptions. So when you look at the budget, we will look at the affordability of those future years and whether those remain as realistic assumptions. But that's a number put in as a provision to look at how we move towards harmonising the workforce. We are unusual as a council that's gone through local government reorganisation, in that normally the host county is on better pay and conditions than the districts that come into it, and therefore that's an easier one to harmonise. We're unusual in that the districts here had a better pay structure than the county, but the county accounted for the bulk of the people in terms of particularly the people-based services around adults and children's. So that makes it particularly challenging in this authority to get to a position of harmonisation. So that provision is in there. It is able to be challenged by you as part of that budget process, but equally it would be prudent to recognise that going through this process is going to cost us some money. And that has to be slightly detached from long-term affordability. I will just come back to that point, that you've heard me say this many times, and I'm going to be like a broken record on it. There will be no extra money from government just because we're Somerset Council and we're struggling. Government will still expect us to perform any necessary changes to bring our annual expenditure back in line with our annual income. That's what we have to do. There's been no authority yet to date where government had not taken that view, including some who are in a far worse state than us. Slough, where they're having to sell pretty much every asset that they've got available. Birmingham probably not in a dissimilar position. Woking, who over borrowed, but government is saying you've got to sort your own problems out, and we don't really mind how you do that, but you've got to take the tough decisions. So we can't sit in a position of saying we want to protect long-term workforce and have no regard to the pay bill, because we have to get that back into balance. When we talk about the report itself, the report does say so the proposal itself has no impact on staffing numbers. What the outcomes of it may do further down the line, that's a different matter. So that's why you see Councillor Mansell two slightly different expressions of that. It's the project itself is not causing any job losses, but further down the line, it's matching that desire to have an attractive organisation with good pay, good retention prospects, where people want to stay in a world, quite frankly, where young people in particular want less permanent roles. They want more flexibility of employment. It's a challenge across local government as a whole, but we've got to balance that need to attract permanent people into the organisation with what we can actually afford to do and be realistic about that. And I think we're just trying to set out the fact that realistically in the long term, that may mean less roles within the organisation and more reliance on technology to do some of the things that maybe are done more manually now. But so these are the kind of opportunities we have to look at.
Thank you. Councillor Butt-Phillip.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to come in on the point about the working. Yes, the years which Mr. Heafy referenced for the 7 million and the 14 million. I think he said 2026, 27 and 27, 28. And I think that's been rephased to be 27, 8 and 28, 9. Yeah.
Working.
Officer Betteridge.
Put me dawn. I just wanted to very quickly address Councillor Mansell's a couple of other questions. We're very cognizant of the fact that there are wider motivational factors at play here other than pay. And what you'll read in the full business case is we're taking a total reward approach. That might not be a language that is very familiar with everybody that has been reading the business case. But what effectively we're saying is we want to look at the overarching package for our workforce, including all financial and non-financial benefits, terms and conditions and reward for our staff. So that's what we mean by total reward. So although there is a very specific focus on sorting out our job evaluation and our pay and grading, we're doing that under the umbrella of a total reward approach of that, and that's really important that when you look at the various work streams within this programme, that we're still looking at the wider package in addition to pay. In terms of the size of the recruitment and retention allowances, we'll bring that back to members. So I've noted that request. I would just say again that there isn't additional budgets for this, and as Chris Hall explained earlier, we have to try and afford these within each service's existing salary budgets. And for every recruitment and retention allowance that is paid, there is a business case that has to be approved by finance and the relevant service director to pay that. Again, that gives us an audit trail to protect the council in the event of any challenge about why we might be paying that recruitment and retention allowance. The final thing I wanted to say is that I also take on board member feedback this morning around how we've approached the report itself, with quite a detailed covering report and then a very detailed business case. And I think that has caused some confusions with the consistency of messaging. So I think what we will do is we'll take that away and make sure that when we take this report to executive, we have a very short and concise covering report, and we refer to the various elements of the business case rather than trying to write it twice. That will be easier, I think, for everybody to read the document, and I absolutely take on board that it's not particularly been helpful where we've tried to be helpful, but the covering report has probably confused and maybe created a couple of inconsistencies that could be avoided. So we'll take that feedback on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Butt-Phillip, you wanted to...
Yeah, just an observation about the question about how much is being paid in recruitment and retention allowances, which is a very important question. I just wanted to flag my potential concern that might be an issue better placed with the HR committee, not because I'm being territorial, and this is something perhaps that the chair of the Corporate Resources Committee and the chair of the HR Committee can discuss offline. I'm just very mindful of the workload of this committee, and it's very important not to start doing stuff that might be being done elsewhere at the expense of doing other things. That's just a conversation to have about where things appropriately sit.
Well, I think it's important that members should be informed. Whether or not they need to debate it at further great length is a slightly different issue. Councillor Mansell, are you happy with those responses?
Yes, thank you for the response. If just really quickly, if I may, I do feel concerned on this affordability question, and feel it's not too. I feel it could have. It needs to be addressed better, including the implications than it currently is in the report. Affordability. It's mentioned that it is one of the key things this programme needs to achieve, and I. Don't feel it's well enough addressed in the current report, which is a bit of a concern, including the implications of that, both financial and otherwise. Thank you.
So you're asking for further clarity on affordability?
Yes, as part of this programme, and it says it's an essential feature of the programme, but I don't. There's not enough in the report to help understand how that is going to be delivered as part of this programme.
Yep. Okay.
And acknowledgement of the implications of what affordability might mean.
Mr. Heafy.
And we acknowledge your request, and it's quite right that you asked to see that. We can't give that at this stage because the work hasn't yet been done. So we need to go through and get the work completed in line with the proposal that you see today, and pick up the implications as we go through. But you'll be seeing regular reports on this as the pay modelling comes out, as we start to look at how this impacts on the organisation. We'll deal with that and the affordability issues. But we have to go through this work first of all to determine what is the right level of structure and pay and grading, and then look at what's affordable in terms of the number of people that we employ. That's part of the modelling process that will happen throughout this project.
Right, thank you. I'm now going to ask Councillor Slocum to join us.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Oh, thank you. My computer's just died. That's why I just wanted to ask. Thank you. I'm on my phone. I just wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, I do believe there should be stronger member involvement. I do appreciate about the work level, but I do think then the debate might have been going on as opposed to today. The one thing I would like to ask is a plea for our staff. We cannot go on losing amazing members of staff. We can't. These are members of staff who work every day and care about their jobs. And I think sometimes we forget they're human beings and they need to know about their lifestyle. They need to know about continuity. And I really, really feel that sometimes we talk about figures and we talk about budgets and we talk about everything over the fact of our staff. And I just want to put a plea in for that, please, because members not knowing, staff members not knowing perhaps the future, going through this transformation must be extremely difficult for them. And I know you are a very kind man and you're caring, but I just tell you, please put that plea in for our staff, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slocum. I'm sure that point is very carefully noted and entirely supported. Thank you very much. Right, I don't see anybody else wishing to comment at this stage. So I think that as members, we have welcomed the report. We've appreciated very much the points that have been made by the officers this morning. I think the two things that I principally take that we really do feel as members some concern about is that it should be made explicit that the assurance board is part of the governance structure. But there is also some underlying concern about the way in which members might be being involved in the process overall, but certainly addressing it through making explicit the assurance board as part of the structure will be a step in that direction. And also that the affordability of the outcome and its implications should be clarified and expanded fully at as early as possible a stage. We accept the points that Mr. Heafy has made about things having to happen in due course, but members do feel that they do need to have that information as early as possible. Is there anything else, members, that you feel we need to add to that? To put forward to the executive? Happy with that? Right. In that case, thank you very much. I will draw that item to an end. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers, for that. We will press straight on, if we may, then to item 6, which is not unrelated. So this is on pages 67 and 82. I will invite Councillor Butt-Phillip to introduce the report, and then Sarah Scrutiny to ask if she wishes to add anything to it. And at that point, I will ask Mr. Orr to pose his question, I think. Well, let's have the officer reports, and then Mr. Orr, if you would like to pose your question at that point. Okay, so Councillor Butt-Phillip.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased to present the last of this series of reports. It's not the end, but the reports have been coming through as and when over the past year or so, and we're moving to a regular quarterly reporting cycle. So this is the last of the as and when reports. The quarterly reporting cycle will start in, I think, in a few months' time. This outlines the work that has been going on with the transformation programme over the past few months since the end of August. There's been a lot of work, as members will be aware. We have appointed a new strategic transformation partner. The contracts have been signed and they have begun. Work. The Assurance Board and the board, so the Inspiring Innovation Assurance Board and the Inspiring Innovation Board have both been meeting regularly and signing off a significant number of business cases, most notably in the areas of children and, as this committee is very well aware, the AI business case, which was scrutinised at length. Work is commencing on further business case work in a range of areas, including office space options, children's case management system, which is an incredibly important IT project, and an area where I know that members feel very strongly, which is the place-based case management system, environmental health planning, and GIS IT systems. So that's a business case that is looking at the future of those systems, but it includes the thing that people ask me about, possibly that more members of this council ask me about the most. It won't surprise you too much to hear that people in the street don't stop me and talk about it, but the case management system for planning is included in that business case. So I know that's something that people are incredibly anxious that we get some movement on. I will hand over to Sarah Scrutiny, who has it's her role to take us through the report.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is an update report on the Inspiring Innovation Programme and does set out the progress, as Councillor Butt-Phillip said, in terms of since our last report to Scrutiny at the end of August. And yet we have successfully procured and mobilised the contract with Newton Consulting Limited as our strategic transformation partner. We're now working with them to identify further opportunities for transformation and change, and that's through a structured diagnostic process, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. We've also been streamlining our kind of business case development and assurance process. Really important that we are making sure that those business cases contain the information that we require, but are not overly burdensome, and that the process is not bureaucratic. Totally taking on board Councillor Osborne's comments earlier about how we are making sure that with the work that we need to do around transformation, that we are collecting the information that we need in a way that is most efficient and effective, and that programme management of our work in a timely way. The diagram on page 68, which I referred to in the earlier item of the paper, that sets out the reporting arrangements for the programme. So you'll see that corporate and resources scrutiny is on there with the programme reporting on a quarterly basis. You can also see on there our assurance board and our officer-led board, which we report to on a monthly basis. There was a question earlier about how those boards work with our existing executive leadership team and our corporate leadership team. It's worth saying that actually where we have business that is urgent, so if we have something that needs to go to one of those boards, we use the executive leadership team meeting or the corporate leadership team meeting interchangeably and make sure that we're using the same terms of reference. So actually we're trying to be as slick and not put in place, as our target operating model says, not put in place additional boards, additional meetings where we can use existing meetings in that space. So what you'll see on that diagram as well, a grey box on the kind of left-hand side is our transformation management office. So it's a small team currently. We are looking at how actually what resources we need within there. But to Clive Heafy's point earlier, how we make sure that we are managing the suite and portfolio of projects and programmes that we need to deliver is really important, and that we get that slick reporting and that information that we can share. And just today I was looking at the I was going to say a beta site, a test site of a dashboard that we're using our data colleagues to help us with this, to be able to show that on an interactive basis. So there's lots going on in that space. So reporting to this committee will be on a quarterly basis. So that is aligning with our budget, performance and risk reporting as well. That does sit alongside our constitutional arrangements. So where you will have a key decision, so for example, a good example of that is the modern data and AI business case that came to executive through Scrutiny last month, so you're aware of those. We've also got opportunities for informal workshops for councillors, so we have got a series of those, starting with the business case development and assurance process, which we've got established for the 7th of November. We've also put in place a Meet the Partner workshop, so that's an opportunity for our councillors to meet with our strategic transformation partner colleagues in Newton on the 21st of November, and an additional workshop on digital inclusion, because I know that was something that came through really loud and clear when we were talking about the transformation plan. How do we as a council make sure that we are thinking, particularly when we're progressing with new digital solutions, new technology, make sure that we are making sure that no one is left out. So what is our digital inclusion approach on that? And recognizing that that doesn't mean how do we funnel everybody into using digital? It's actually what are we putting in place for those who don't have access to or aren't able to use that as well. The timeline on page 72 of the reports pack, that sets out the work that's taking place up until January. You will see there is a kind of thick bunch of chevrons there that we're currently in the midst of, which is our diagnostic process, where we're looking at our initial stakeholder engagement, reviewing the change projects that are already in train, sharing data so that we can really understand the opportunities for short-term tactical solutions, and also those bigger transformation initiatives that we can build our business cases for to feed into the budget setting process. Just in terms of this diagnostic, because I know this is probably a phrase that we're maybe not familiar with, it is an approach that our transformation partner colleagues use, but really it is exactly what it says. It's diagnosing opportunities, and on paragraph 20 on page 75 of your pack sets out what is contained within that diagnostic process. What I would say is, you know, looking ahead, really this committee's role is really important. What's helpful for us is for you to review progress, as Clive Heafy said before, you know, to hold us to account in terms of delivering against our programme, and to also make sure that our transformation is ambitious but achievable and sustainable. And I think also to identify those areas where you want to dig a little deeper in terms of that workshop opportunity.
Thank you very much, Officer Scrutiny. I will now ask Mr. Orr if he would come to the microphone to put his question, please.
Thank you, Chair. Needless to say, I wouldn't start from here. If this council was going to take a consultancy-led approach to transformation, really should have started 18 months ago after the first warning from Grant Thornton there was a lack of pace in transformation. Workshops are usually informed meetings to share information, train or discuss issues before decisions go to formal committees. Given that the savings from up to 20 million of consultancy over 5 years for the Inspiring Innovation Programme are said to be critical to the financial survival of Somerset Council, I think it's key that the proposed savings workshops are open to the public and media, publicly diarised and recorded. There is nothing in Somerset's constitution prevents workshops being open to the public and media, and in fact, there is precedent. Wiltshire and Cornwall have opened up workshops that are dealing with major issues, of which obviously budgets and savings is one of them. If a so-called workshop starts to discuss live proposals, savings or staffing changes that are about to go to committee executive for approval, you could reasonably argue under the local authorities executive arrangements, meetings and access to information regulations 2012, that it should have been part of a public pre-decision scrutiny session, not an internal workshop. You could therefore, as a committee, request that all inspiring innovation discussions involving service redesign or spending plans be tabled at a public scrutiny, corporate and scrutiny meeting. I think there's and obviously it would be sensible that where there are large savings, there are $1 million plus over 3 years, or a return on investment over 2, that those are the ones that need to come to committee. The other concern I have is who's going to ratify this, because my experience in both Southwest One and Ignite at Taunton Dean is that savings come with a huge amount of optimism bias, especially if you're trying to impress the government or auditors. So I think it's important that savings are grounded. And to that extent, I have actually written to the 151 officer to ask if finance will have a role in assuring savings, because in Ignite at Taunton Dean, the amount of transformation on the website was 10%, not 90 as claimed. The savings weren't made and additional costs of 10 million came about. So you'll forgive my skepticism about optimism bias. So really what I'm saying to you as a committee, that I think there will be times when workshops are inappropriate and we should have a formal scrutiny meeting before it goes to key decision executive. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Orr. I will read you the formal response to your question. I have some comments of my own as well. Thank you for your submission in relation to the proposed informal workshop for councillors regarding the Council's Inspiring Innovation Programme. I note your points about transparency and the practice of some other councils for some of their workshops. As you have highlighted, informal workshops are not legally required to be open to the public and they have no decision-making powers. Like most councils, it is Somerset Council's practice not to hold informal workshops for councillors in public. And I think if I would interpose something here, there is always a danger of making a workshop public and that it effectively then becomes a matter of record and therefore effectively a committee meeting without having the proper governance structure in place to support it. So there are potential issues about opening a workshop to the public, I think. The proposed workshop for councillors was endorsed by the committee at its meeting on the 30th of July. I'd like to clarify that the upcoming Inspiring Innovation workshops are not focused on spend, savings proposals or staffing changes. Their purpose is to provide an informal space for sharing information, learning and development around the programme. These sessions are designed to build understanding and capability rather than to make decisions or discuss live proposals. And I have to say, where I would agree with you entirely, Mr. Orr, is that they should not, emphatically not, be decision-making bodies and should resist, in my view, decision-forming or predetermining any course of action. They should be genuine opportunities for discussion, but not conclusion. Any matters relating to service redesign, spending plans, or decisions will continue to follow the appropriate governance routes, including scrutiny and formal committee processes, in line with the Council's constitution and statutory requirements. We very much appreciate your continuing interest in ensuring openness and will continue to uphold transparency through the Council's established scrutiny and decision-making framework. But thank you, Mr. Orr, very much for having brought that point to our attention this morning. Councillor Butt-Phillip.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, I was just having a look at the papers as published online, and I merely observed that at the bottom it says response from the lead member for transformation, and because that has been published online, I wanted to explain publicly why the response was not coming from me, and it is very simply because it is a question about the how this committee does its job, and I thought it was inappropriate for me to answer for how this committee does its job. This committee is independent of me, and that's why I said I would prefer it to come from the chair of the committee to explain what the committee is doing and not me.
Thank you, Councillor Butt-Phillip, but please understand it won't stop us telling you how you should do your job. So, anyway, thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Heafy.
Chair, if I could make just a quick point in response to Mr. Orr, who I think makes some very good and very valid points. To give assurance that finance will be involved in this at every stage, and there is a finance member of my team who is effectively an implant into the transformation team, who's looking over every business case, the dashboard, the finances. I've asked for a report to be produced for me on a monthly basis, showing what investment is going in every year, what savings are coming out every year, and tracking that 3-to-1 ratio. So we will absolutely track it through finance, and the finance person embedded into that system is really critical to have, which is there. I also take the point about optimism bias as well. We need to watch out for optimism bias. Before any of these proposals goes into next year's medium-term financial plan, I will need to see an approved business case. That business case will need to tell me what is being done, how we're going to measure its success, who's doing it, when it's going to be done by, what are the milestones, what investments needed, and what's the basis for the savings assumptions being made. Without those, even if it's in the transformation programme, if I can't see that, I will not be allowing it to go forward into the MTFP proposals because they're not robust enough, and to do so would play into the point that Mr. Orr makes about optimism bias. We need it checking and double checking and making sure that we can validate everything that goes into those, and then that you as members, when you're looking through the assurance board to get assurance, are monitoring against those proposals which you know have been properly road tested, I think would be the phrase.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got various members asking to speak, first of whom is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I'm still, it's great to hear that your reassurance of all the financial checks that will be taking place. I'm still not quite clear where the scrutiny of that is coming through. In terms of the assurance board are meeting, and how is the financials feeding into the insurance board, and then how is that being then fed back to corporate and resources scrutiny? Is that just going to come in this quarterly report we get? And I'm slightly concerned that that's quarterly, whereas these other meetings are monthly, that things could well be happening, financial decisions being made on a monthly basis that we're not going to pick up till after the event. And yeah, that's still not really clear to me in that, in the table that Sarah referred to, that sort of shows, it doesn't really show the flow. It lists various boards, but it doesn't show the flow of information through those meetings.
Thank you for my Chair. The first point to make is that Grant Thornton talk about pace, and that's definitely true. They want to see a pace on the programme. It's not one that can be over-governed or slowed down. It's got to be happening at pace. And from my experience of doing transformation programmes and watching them around local government, the ones that succeed are the ones that are, we use that phrase agile, that can move quickly, that are very responsive to things as they arise. The ones that fail are the ones that fail to have that rigour around them. So there's a general principle to hold there. The principle I talked about earlier on about officers delivering members getting assurance. So the transformation board will be the place where officers will deliver against what you've approved as a programme of measures. And the assurance board is the primary board for then keeping us in check and balance. So that assurance board will be checking that projects are on target, that themes are on target. If not, they'll be putting us under pressure, quite rightly, to say, what are you doing to mitigate it and bring that back onto target? And therefore, it's appropriate, in my view, that we have periodic reporting to scrutiny, to audit on the control issues that audit might be interested in. For instance, various bodies will be interested in this, but more periodic reviews, just checking in and checking the balance on that. But I would urge you not to repeat the work of the member oversight board that's given the assurance in terms of the programme as a whole, because that just slows down the pace on the entire programme. But I appreciate the need that we perhaps need to be a little clearer on that and what you're going to see and when you're going to see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Sorry, could I just add to that, if I may? That's sort of one element too. That's one strand that's very important from a governance point of view. Of course, the other strand is the decision-making strand, which will continue to follow the council's usual processes. So depending on the significance of any commitment to spend and the timescale, that will have an impact on whether it's a non-key decision or a key decision, whether it goes to the executive. And for key decisions, we are committed to delivering a forward plan of work to enable this committee to decide which of those it wishes to bring to this committee in advance.
Right, thank you. Our next speaker is Councillor Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We seem to be mixing up the transformation programme with the budget. I understand that we're going to save some money with the transformation programme, but this transformation programme runs considerably longer than this budget does. And at the moment, we had a long discussion in this committee last year about actually bringing the budget to this committee considerably earlier so that we could have some idea what we were going to be dealing with later in the year. Now, at the Climate and Place Scrutiny Committee, we were told that there was going to be something like a 90 million capital, can't remember the word for it, that was going to need to be applied for, and that means that we are going to be talking about February with dealing with the budget again. And I do not think that not having figures considerably earlier on the budget as opposed to the transformation is acceptable. And we are really mixing up the two particular things. And I'm absolutely certain, Mr. Heapy, that you have got a budget in black and white with possible savings lined up already.
I'm not holding anything back from you, Councillor Hobhouse, I do assure you. We are working on a budget process. I joined the organisation at the start of July and immediately started work on the budget process for this year. We have been around all directorates and we've done 3 rounds of budget challenge sessions with every directorate, which is a considerable amount of time invested into that through all directors and directorates. The figure of 90 million is the council's gap as it stood in September. That was the latest assessment, down from 100 million. And that gap will continue to change over time. Now, we were promised by government that we would get a provisional finance settlement much earlier than in previous years, in October or early November. That has not materialised, and we're now being told it will be pretty much around the 21st of December. So as we go to Christmas. So we enter a budget consultation without knowing what that local government settlement is going to look like. We were promised fair funding review at a much earlier stage. We now have that delayed and deferred, and we don't know the outcomes of that. So that's a key factor which is influencing things. We have new ministers and a new Secretary of State, and whilst we knew the position of the former Minister and Secretary of State with regard to exceptional financial support and council tax rises above inflation, we don't know the views of the new Minister and Secretary of State. And I have started discussions with officials within MHCLG on where we might stand on that. We are not going to need 90 million of exceptional financial support. I expect a considerable amount of the gap to be closed by further savings proposals, which are still being developed. I don't have things in black and white. I have things in development and possibilities, and we're taking those through informal executive at the moment for discussion before they get formulated into a final plan. But I do expect there'll be a need for some exceptional financial support on this journey. Now, your point about mixing up budget and transformation, the two are, if I may say so, completely interlinked. What I look at when I look at a budget is not a 1-year budget for next year. I look at a 4-year programme called the Medium Term Financial Plan. And what we need to do for this year is to get our medium financial plan into balance over a period of time. So it's unlikely we'll get the 26-27 budget balanced without some further exceptional financial support. But I don't think we ever saw that as being the goal. I think we saw we were on a journey post local government reorganisation, coming together to try and make this budget balance. And we have to demonstrate to government that we are balancing the budget. But that means balancing over a 2, 3, 4 year time horizon, not balancing over one. So in the early years, what you've been used to is savings taking the strain of the budget changes. What you'll see over time is savings going down as a proportion of the savings, but transformation, which is the opportunity to remodel services completely differently and get better outcomes at lower cost, going up over time. But that will only deliver the minor part for next year. It will deliver the major part in year 2 and even bigger part in year 3. So I'd urge you to look at the budget as a 4-year medium-term financial plan. The auditor and government will be rightly critical if we continue to focus on 1 year, even though we would argue that we only get acknowledgement 1 year of what the resources are likely to be. And I've given you an indication of some of the things that remain outstanding from government at the moment. So perhaps if we can just see it as a medium-term plan over a 4-year period instead of just a 1-year budget, we can start to see then the interplay of savings versus transformation. But the key thing is that if we are going to go to government, if we're going to go to government next year for a 3rd year of exceptional financial support, we have to do so with a trajectory to balancing the budget over the next couple of years, and not go just cap in hand and hoping that government will give us that every year, because they won't. They will only do it on the basis that they see some movements and some trajectory, which is where transformation comes in to fill that gap over the medium term. Is that helpful? I mean, transformation by its very nature needs investment up front to deliver longer term, because it's changing models of delivery, and that's the nature of these programmes.
Can I come back, Mr. Chairman? I fully understand what you're saying. The point I'm trying to make here is that we have no indication on the medium-term financial plan, if that's what you want to talk about what the position is, and we haven't had one since July time, as far as I can see, and we're not going to get one according to this programme until January. Now, I would ask whether if we can have a report back on what the budget's looking like sometime in November or December.
I will check the budget update position, but we updated it in September, and I think that Scrutiny did consider that at that point in time, but I will check the exact dates for you on that one. The proposal is that Scrutiny will have at least 3 attempts to look at the budget. Once we've got the figures tied down and ready to go out to consultation, there'll be a chance in December for you to have a look at the figures, a chance on the 5th of January, and a chance then on the 29th of January. So 3 chances that you have to look at those proposals and scrutinise them and give your views on those. So I'm trying to build that in, but given the timescales we're inevitably working to, which I accept are much tighter, if I'd been here in April or May, I would have started this process in April or May, because I think we did start it too late, and I think there's a lesson to be learned there. But nonetheless, those proposals are still in development. You will see them shortly, and you will have 3 chances to look at them and discuss them in detail before they become final proposals that go forward to full council at the end of February.
Councillor Johnson.
Can I just check my understanding then? Because I'm getting a bit confused, I'm sorry. On page 71, I think it is, we have a list of 73. We have a list of things that have been considered and approved by the Inspiring Innovation Board. So they've been considered and approved as going potentially forward. I'm not quite sure where they go from there. I'm not really clear where that then goes to, in what orders, and where the budgeting of those or the money spent on those projects gets considered and reviewed, and by whom. So if you could clarify that for me, if ideas are coming forward and being approved by the board, what is the pathway from then on?
It's as Councillor Philip set out. There is a council or already delegated authority level that, where it's a key decision over 500,000, it will go through that normal route and normal scrutiny to be finally approved. That's the route it goes through. Where it's below that, it will be officer delegations that will lead on that. So that's just following normal council process once we're into that approval area.
So there's no cost in exploring these ones that have been approved. All the expenses involved in further works on them, or for further. Is that all under the Newton budget that we have approved already? So the work that takes place to bring them to the next stages?
Newton will oversee that work. They initially we've only committed 1.5 million or so of the 20 million indicated. So further work packages will be awarded as and when we know that Newton are in a position to be able to deliver against those. And we haven't ruled out equally using third parties with some of that money, albeit under Newton's overall guidance as the programme lead with us, the joint programme lead and partner. There may be others involved in that. So we'll allocate that money as and when it's needed. But rest assured, there's nothing we're doing that falls outside normal council written governance.
Okay,
thank you.
Councillor Butt-Philip.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so 2 examples from the list that Councillor Johnson has mentioned. The Homes for Horizons business case has been expansion, the next series of homes 9 to 11. Those have been considered by the Assurance Board. They are going to executive for the final decision on Wednesday. So that's how that is decided. It's decided by executive. It will be decided next week. The modern data and AI business case went to the Inspiring Innovation Assurance Board. It was then went on to both scrutiny on the 29th of September and to the executive, and it was the executive that made the ultimate decision on the 1st of October. So once something has been through the Assurance Board, it still needs to go through our normal governance process. And as I say, that depends on what the level of expenditure is, where that goes to. But if it is a significant amount of expenditure, it will go to the executive, as those ones have done or are doing.
Right, thank you. So the next questioner is Councillor Trimnall.
Thank you, Chair. So hopefully mine are fairly brief. So on page 68, the table, Inspiring Innovation Programme Reporting. I didn't find it particularly easy to work out, to be fair, to be honest with you. I didn't find it. I looked at it and I thought, I don't know what's leading to what really. There were just lines everywhere. However, I suspect I'm probably not supposed to. I suspect that it's more a thing for the people who are working within it. And there's that thing again that we are somewhat on the outside looking in to the work that's being done. But what I wanted to pick up on particularly was this programme highlight reporting monthly at the bottom. I think that relates to the 6 items boxed at the bottom of that: adults, children's, transformation, change, culture, and future direction. And it would have made more sense if adults and children weren't on there, or if the other directorates were on there as well, to me. And so I couldn't quite figure out where do the other directorates fit in, because they all seem a little disparate to me. So that was my first question. And then my second, there's a lot of talk about culture, and I wondered what the analysis of the culture is now and what the aspiration is for the culture going forward, please.
Of Scrutiny.
Thank you. Yeah, so on the diagram, and apologies that we're trying to make clear on here where the highlight reports go and etc. And I understand there's lots of lines on there. The thematic boards. So what we've got down there is we've got suggested thematic boards. So it says TBC. The reason why those are in there is to show the kind of thing that we might have as a thematic board. Now, what we are also recognising is that currently we do have an adults transformation board and we do have a children's transformation board. So there will need to be, as the diagnostic that we're doing with our strategic transformation partner, as that progresses and we focus on some key areas that we want to transform, that's where those kind of thematic boards will come from. So they'll be less likely to be adults, children's. There'll be more around, maybe there'll be one around prevention, or depending on what comes out of the diagnostic, which we're currently in the process of doing at the moment. But what we wanted to do is give a flavour of that's where the different programmes. So similarly, although it's not a thematic board, the pay and grading or the pay and reward programme feeds into that process there. So it's trying to demonstrate those are coming through the process through a monthly highlight report. through the board and then the assurance board, and then quarterly to yourselves and to executives, that we've got that opportunity for oversight. So that's where they are. So, and interestingly, what we didn't want to do really, because it didn't seem like it was the best way of doing it, was to just set up those thematic boards around directorates, because what we're looking for is that kind of whole council transformation. So it will evolve over time. So watch this space. So coming into kind of January time, we'll be clearer around what those thematic boards are and how that work will come.
So, I mean, it would have been good just to say, for example, because I sat for ages trying to work out what the link between them, why some of them were coloured different. So that makes sense now. Thank you.
And yeah, so just to pick up your point on culture as well. So the culture work is starting in the next couple of weeks. And part of that is going to be about understanding what is our current culture. Now, that's not to say we're starting from a blank sheet of paper, because obviously we've had the staff survey. We've been doing a run of staff engagement workshops, which have been led by our service directors, actually focusing on some of the themes that have come out of our staff survey results. So that will all feed into our understanding of how does it feel like to work in our organisation at the moment, what the kind of organisation we want to and need to be in the future, and what the programme is for that. And that work is done alongside Dawn and colleagues within HR and OD and across the leadership team, so that we're getting that understanding and buy-in, and something that Duncan himself is really keen on being the kind of figurehead for.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have a number of questions on this one. Can you confirm that the workshops you've referred to, are those for members per se, so for all council members, or are they actually designed for scrutiny committee members? So that would be useful in the first instance. Second was, I note you said that finance will be involved and that finance will be signing off the business cases. When are those reports, particularly the tool for the return on investment, when is that going to start coming to scrutiny, so we at least can see that? That's one question. And also the monthly highlight reports that are produced from the thematic boards and feed into the Transformation Management Office as per page 68, can't those not feed into scrutiny as well? So we have sight of that, because I think, as Councillor Johnson correctly pointed out, quarterly is quite a long time, and you could be looking at very historic events by the time some of that reporting comes to you, when we probably need to be keeping more of a handle on it. In terms of the finance side of it and diagnostics and delivery, presumably Newton have now started, but how soon will it be before their findings will be available to inform the 26-27 budget? And what are the contingency plans in the event that those diagnostic outputs arrive too late to actually be worked into the current 26-27 budget? Because we've also got to survive that year in order to go on to years 2, 3 and 4 as well. Yeah, I've covered financial reporting, the financial reporting tool. How's that going to come back to us? And how are you going to prioritise balance in portfolios? Because at the moment there's a very heavy emphasis on children's services. But how are sort of cases for adults and also the place proposals? Because last week at Climate and Place, Officer Hall referred to needing a IT program to cover harmonisation in planning and planning administration, but it was also going to be combined with regulatory ops as well. That would be multi-million. Will that be coming to us? And where are how are you going to determine what takes priority, bearing in mind what was said earlier about the danger of overload, both to resources and also to people as well? and how are you going, and where the programme is slipping, and finally, where the programme is slipping behind, I think culture is one of those. What steps are you taking to get back on track?
Officer Scrutiny. It is Councillor Osborne's birthday, so I suppose we have to allow a litany of questions.
That's absolutely fine. I'll just take the last one first, just to say that the culture programme, not slipping, that's the planned approach. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to focus initially on the review of our existing change projects to validate, are they going to deliver the savings that we want them to deliver? How do we get those in a state so they can be fed into the budget setting? Identifying the transformation initiatives, so the bigger projects and programs that we want to initiate next year so that we can actually be building that 2-3 year program. The culture, we were starting a bit later than that, but that will run through longer. So that's got an 18-month kind of program in that. So it's not that it's slipping and we need to get it back on track. It's that we are, as you said, we have to schedule the work that we're doing to make sure that we are mindful of the resource implications. And so what we're doing, because we've got the staff engagement workshops working at the moment, actually that feeds nicely into the cultural diagnostic. So that's on that one, just to explain that. In terms of the workshops, I know that in the past we've had scrutiny workshops which we've opened up to all members. So again, I would pass that back to the committee to make a decision on how they want those to run. The business cases that come out of the diagnostic. So on the high level timeline in there, what you'll see is the business case development. It will start in the next couple of weeks as we get that the results coming out of the diagnostic. And again, we're looking for those to feed into the budget setting process. So that's the kind of timeline on there. In terms of the highlight report, obviously, as you can see from the setup here and the timeline, you can see that the contract was signed with Newton on the 13th of October. We've been mobilising, we've been getting the diagnostic up and running there. We will start to develop those highlight reports and indeed the dashboard that I was looking at this morning. And what we will do is we will look at what information we've got coming through there and the best way that we can share that and the most appropriate way, bearing in mind Clive Heapy and our comments that we've made earlier around we don't want to slow anything down. We want to keep making sure that we've got that operational pace and that we've got the right eyes on at the right time. So yeah, and in terms of Newton and feeding into the budget, yeah, absolutely. That is those are the timeframes that we're working to right now. So we've got steps with our board and with the insurance board. We're building a really detailed, behind this high level programme, which actually does look quite detailed, there is an even more detailed programme that sits behind there. Okay. Oh, and then there was one last one around balancing portfolios. So yeah, really, this is a really important thing. One of the things that we are going to have, we cannot do everything all at once. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to make some decisions around what is going to yield the biggest impact, both in terms of outcomes for our residents and also in terms of at that lower cost. And there's some tests that we'll be putting in there around those that we can move quickest on, those that need investment for us to which will take longer, and we will be looking at that across the whole of the council. And it is inevitable that there will be focus on those areas that are high cost, high demand, high risk. They're some of the areas that we will need to look at. But we will do that as a board when we're looking into that, and there'll be clear explanation as to why we're focusing on the areas we're focusing on. And then that will be able to be scrutinised.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, I think so for now. It's clearly a very complex area with a lot of moving parts and getting everything prioritised. And also, as well, there's going to be some conflict arise within there where people will say, well, my case is just as important as yours. So how are you going to go about managing conflict resolution in that sense? Because I think we're quite keen. Councillor Hobhouse has alluded to it, and it came up at Climate and Place. We're very anxious to see that IT system, harmonised IT system. It should have been done on day one, it wasn't, but to sort of bring that forward so we have a far better planning system, and we don't have those backlogs and all the problems that go with it. But then also some of the children's cases and some of the adults' cases will be just as important as well.
Right, thank you. Councillor Buck-Philip.
I mean, I just have to disagree that it should have been done on day one. I mean, it would be lovely to have had everything in place on day one, but I mean, I'm aware of other councils which went unitary at the same time of us that, you know, have started, but are, you know, have so far got through to merging 2 districts worth of systems. I mean, you know, yeah, it'd be great if it was all ready on day one, but in terms of that being a realistic approach, I just don't think it was one.
Right, Officer Heafy, please.
And on that as well, of course, when you come together through LGR, there are contracts in place that you can't do anything with until contracts end. There are systems and systems agreements in place and need to check the right system going forward, etc. So that's why these things can take quite a long time, because you have to pick your moments as to when you've got the opportunity to do it. The opportunity doesn't always present itself on day one. Just to pick up your point, Councillor Osborne, as well, around the budgeting part of this. Clearly, we're looking for the diagnostic phase to be done in December time, which is fine. But what that does mean is that we won't necessarily be able to consult on those proposals when we go out to budget consultation. They will require a separate consultation exercise, which may need to take place early in the new year in spring, because we still want to, and in many cases have to do that consultation exercise, which means from my point of view, I won't necessarily be able to assume a full year saving on some of these. It may well be further down the line. So again, it plays to the point of, I would have preferred to have started earlier with the authority and started this process earlier. I would have preferred to have the transformation partner in place earlier, but you know, we are where we are, as they say, and we have to deal with what we've got in front of us. So that will be the proposal.
Right, Sue.
Thank you, Chairman, for indulging me. Just a point, I actually looked up to see if what was available for that particular type of software we were talking about, regulatory ops and planning. And actually Dorset Council have put in a new system, which they're running at the moment. And they're looking to do more of that, as have Christchurch and East Dorset. So there are systems like that, and there are unitaries who started out not a lot ahead of us that are actually already doing that work.
Thank you. Councillor Lation.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to Dorset, I know when they went to unitary, 2 of their districts used the same numbering system on planning applications. So you can imagine how that played out for the first few years. And it's a long programme. It doesn't happen overnight. If there were a longer run up to LGR, districts could possibly put their systems together. But we're looking, as you know, at Revs and Bens at the moment. Mendip had outsourced on a 9-year contract. We've had to wait for that contract to end. So some of the parts of the contract we were able to come out of during 4 years of the last administration at Mendip, but the Revs and Bens, we have only just come out of that at the end of September. These are really, really difficult, long-term, complex issues for Somerset Council. And no matter how much anybody wishes them to be done quickly and easily, they simply cannot. And if you had a company that turned over, say, £650 million a year, and its expenditure was exceeding its income, you would expect that to be a very testing and very complex and very challenging situation to turn that around so that your expenditure did not exceed your income. And that is where we are. And we have got very, I'll say it, very skilled, very experienced officers working on this. And I think that we need, as an executive, as a scrutiny, as an assurance board, we need to appreciate those challenges that they're up against. And then when we had the change of Secretary of State and the change of Minister for Local Government, and we lost what we'd hoped for, which was that early
3-year agreement on funding, and when the fair funding review suddenly started to look a bit different, that all made it much more difficult. And those are the things that we just have to live with and we have to work through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. I don't see any other members wishing to speak apart from Councillor Butt-Phillip, who wishes to come back for the very small point.
Which is that Dorset Council came into existence 6.5 years ago. The comparison with their progress will be relevant in 4 years' time.
Thank you. Just looking at the recommendations, one item that we've been specifically asked to consider is that of the workshops. Looking at the invitations which have already been issued for the workshops, they amount to 36 or 37 councillors. It varies between the two. And it is all of this committee, as far as I can tell, all of the audit committee, and the chairs and vice chairs of the other scrutinies. This is less of a workshop and possibly more of a mighty gathering of a third of the council. So I think we have to perhaps temper in the course of time the ability to actually genuinely workshop ideas and just be an invited audience to have a presentation with that number of councillors attending. So that might need to be looked at in the future. The forward plan of the future workshops, as you will see on page 69, is to be developed and agreed with the chair and vice chair of this committee, because we are the lead scrutiny for this programme. The first two workshops that have been programmed are understanding how business cases are developed, which is on the 7th of November, so that's a week on Friday, and it's online at 10 o'clock. Okay.
I can't attend that.
No, and I'm afraid I can't stay beyond 11:30, so I've got to attend a funeral. And then on the 21st of November, also a Friday, but this time in person, it is Meet the Partner. Probably here, but I don't know that that's yet being confirmed. But as I say, pretty large groups, so we may have to just look at the membership in due course as to whether or not that's actually rather unwieldy. Turning to paragraph 5, particularly bearing in mind the response we gave earlier to Mr. Orr, line 5, the findings and any recommended actions from a workshop. I'm cautious about the inclusion of "and any recommended actions" because I don't really think it's the job of a workshop to come up with recommended actions. I think findings is sufficient. Okay. It is very important that we are transparent in what we do with those workshops. And I don't want there to be any suggestion that we are taking decisions on this very important topic behind closed doors. Any other comments on that, ladies and gentlemen? Are we happy with those thoughts going? Is there anything else that we wish to add to the recommendations? If not, you're all happy with that? In which case, I'm going to say we'll have a 10-minute pause and reconvene at 20 to 1. Thank you. Right, we'll now move on, if we may, to item 7, the local devolution update, and I will invite Councillor Butt-Phillip, who's been worked very hard this morning, to present the report.
I think of no better way to spend my morning and early afternoon than with you fine people. This report follows on from this. How's that? That's better. This report follows on from the previous update on the local devolution programme, which was brought to this committee in May, and provides the committee with an update on the current progress of the local devolution programme as a whole, as well as progress relating to actions from the recommendations made by the committee at the last meeting. clear that some good progress has been made on the programme. I'm pleased to update the committee that between the time this report was written and the meeting taking place, the number of completed asset transfers has now risen to over 60. Slightly disappointed it hasn't been 60 since the report was written, but there we go. It's over 60 over the course of the programme. I know that one of the concerns raised by the committee at the last meeting was around the resourcing of the programme. Certainly it's a concern that I'm very well aware of and very alive to. Since the last update, the committee has, to this committee, the role of local devolution lead has been appointed to, and we welcome Jessica Kemish, who is the local devolution lead and is joining Sarah Skirton today. The report outlines that a resource request has also been made for an extension to a locum legal post and a project officer to support the programme. And since the report was written, confirmation has been received that that resource request has been approved, and officers are working to recruit to the project officer post, which will add valuable capacity to the team. As with the previous update to the committee, we would welcome the thoughts of members of future direction of local devolution programme, and I will now hand over to the aforementioned Sarah Skirton and Jessica Kemish, who will take you through the report.
Thank you, Councillor Phillip. Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it really brief. When we met in May and we had a detailed discussion around local devolution, at that point, I think you may recall that we were looking to recruit a local devolution lead, which is Jessica, who I'm really pleased to have joined the team. Jessica has worked really hard with colleagues across the council, so this is work from a range of service areas to update, move forward and address the recommendations that came from Corporate Resources Scrutiny Committee at that time. You'll note that some of those recommendations will have been actioned, will have been completed, some are ongoing. We're not losing track of any of those. But if that's okay, Chair, I will hand over to Jessica as the report author to take you through the key points. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Councillor Butford and Sarah, for those introductions. As Councillor Butford outlined, overall we've made some good progress since the last update to this committee back in May, with a significant increase in the number of assets which have now been completed in terms of their devolutions. We've likewise started to action the recommendations made by this committee, though you will note from the report that there is still work to do in terms of actioning those requests. One area which we are particularly focusing on at present and over the coming weeks is improving our communications. We are increasing our updates to local ward members and will be circulating later this week as well a briefing sheet to all members in which we hope to reflect any key topics raised at today's meeting as well. We are likewise increasing our engagement with city, town and parish councils. Members did also request at the last meeting some information on learning to date through the devolution programme. We have included within the report some of the learning we have gained as Somerset Council, but we are also undertaking a piece of work at the moment to reach out to our town councils in particular who have already gone through the devolution process to gather any of their reflections on learning which has taken place at their end as well, so that we're able to share that more widely in the hope that that will benefit for future devolutions to other city, town and parish councils which we have in the pipeline. Members also expressed concerns about resourcing of the programme, and as Councillor Phillip touched on, we are now in a stronger position in terms of our resourcing for the programme, having gained a dedicated estate surveyor post, as well as my role as local devolution lead since that update in May, and with that more recent resourcing request now having been approved and the recruitment for that having started. I will pause there and hand back to you, Chair, for any questions.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any points that you wish to make? Could I just observe that and maybe ask your view on the progress paragraph 2 on those things that have really swung into action? are very much the larger towns, city and larger towns. And I'm very conscious of the fact that some of our smaller and indeed very small parishes, whilst they might be anxious to undertake activities and have them devolved to them, it's a trickier bit of work, and some of them are going to have to work collectively in order to achieve a devolution outcome. Where is that sitting in your timeline of activity? Because Somerset has some very sparsely populated areas and some very small parish councils, which are very effective, but nevertheless don't have necessarily the size to sustain some of the programmes in the way that the other parishes and towns and cities mentioned on the list so far have.
Yes, absolutely. So as you'll note in the report, we have started to engage with some of the smaller parishes now. So we've had conversations with 13 relating to their asset devolution expressions of interest. 9 of those we are taking forward. Some it either transpires that we may not own an asset, for example, that was requested, or other reasons why we can't take those forward at this time. But 9 we are progressing. Those at the moment have not reached the stage of, you'll note further down in the report, there's a table that shows the steps that these each go through. So all of those conversations with those parishes are still at the earlier steps of that process. They have not yet reached the point of being at step 6, where they reach the actual legal work to take place on completing those asset devolutions. So it is at that point that you would see sort of those more detailed updates that we have around the towns. We are also hoping that we will be taking forward the next 6 smaller parishes on our expressions of interest list by the end of this calendar year. We anticipate having discussions with them that those sort of next 6 on the list are being discussed at our officer group asset management forum next week, ahead of then us reaching out to those parishes to begin more detailed discussions with them around those devolutions. So that's where we are at this moment in time. In terms of giving timelines for future and when we might then bring forward the next groups on that list, it's very difficult to say, because what our experience has been is that sometimes transfers that we anticipate will be quite simple and won't take too much time, when we actually get into the detail of them can be more complicated than initially thought, because there might be additional restrictions on titles, for example, or things that come out of the woodwork once our property teams start doing their due diligence on those assets ahead of the transfers.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. But I just will observe that in my division alone, we've got 23 parishes, and you're talking in terms of 9 that you're working with actively across the whole of the county. So that there is quite a lot of scope there, I suspect, still for work to take place to fully progress the devolution process.
Yes, if I can just come back on that as well. I know you mentioned in your earlier point, Chair, about opportunities for parishes to work together, potentially for those smaller parishes where they might wish to club together. I'm currently working with our parish liaison officer as well as our LCN teams around thinking about how we can enable those opportunities going forward. So that is a piece of work that we are just starting on now to look at going forward, because I think we are conscious about enabling those opportunities wherever we might be able to. So it is something that is on our minds. In terms of that sort of wider piece, for your example there of there being 23 parishes. So at the moment, our expressions of interest received to date, the total is around 80 expressions of interest across Somerset from city, town and parish councils. There will come a point where we will likely start having further conversations with our parishes around, interest and whether there is any further interest. But I think in terms of our capacity on the programme at the moment and our outstanding list, that's where our focus remains at the moment, is to work on delivering for those who we know, some of whom have been waiting a long time.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Filmer.
There's just a couple, if I could. One, on page 87, you've got the various steps laid out. I think it would be useful under step 4, it sort of implicitly implies a member involvement because it goes to a potential non-key or key decision. But I think it would be helpful to make that more explicit, that there is a member involvement at that point, because I think it is crucial. You do say within, I think it's 8.3 on page 92 about getting members more involved, but I think we do need to be explicit within the line as to where we are. In a similar vein, I think it's on page 91, it talks about the use of the parish council's forum. Could I make a plea again that members are made aware of what happens at the parish council forum? We're often not aware, and I'm sure other members have had the experience of going to parish council meetings and being briefed by them as to what the council is doing, because we haven't heard what the parishes have been told in their updates. So at some point, can we please make sure? I know it's not keen for us to attend that because we might get more involved in things than we should do, but I think we do need to know what happens at those and make sure that we're aware of what happens.
Just to say that I recognise the concern that Councillor Filmer has raised. My current strategy for dealing with it is to attend them myself, write down anything I think that members haven't been told, and then make sure members are told it. That is with a view to making sure it doesn't happen, but to pick it up, but also to pick it up if it does.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to do something now I don't really approve of, which is raise a specific issue, but I suffer at Kingsbury Episcopal Parish Council because it's chaired by the former Deputy Leader of Somerset County Council, and it has another former councillor on it as well. So I'm badgered on this point at every meeting, every month. So not now, but Jessica, if you could let me know, that they at least have applied. They say they have, and that they're in the pipeline. That would be useful. And by the way, really nice to see somebody appointed to your role by internal promotion too. That's the kind of transformation process beginning to work properly. My other question is it also within your remit or the remit of this report to look at the combination of councils, like we dealt with the merger of Langport and Newish Episcopi last time? And, it's not. So my question is, what's the right point to raise that? Because I happened to go to Monk Silver Parish Council yesterday about a flooding issue, which is, I think, the smallest parish council we've got. It's in Dunster Division. And I've got Muchelney, which is parish meeting, which is actually bigger than Monk Silver Parish Council, but is reluctant to become a parish council or to merge with another one. So where are we addressing this whole question of rationalising the structure of parish meetings and parish councils and their sizes?
Thank you, Chair. And again, I think hopefully most members will know that much of that falls in what are called community governance reviews. Community governance reviews are a matter that falls under the remit of the Constitution and Governance Committee. Again, there's a process that to follow in terms of initiating those reviews, but hopefully all members will also appreciate, particularly in terms of the sheer scale of town and parish councils. Clearly, if all of them or a large number of them were to come to this council to initiate that, there is clearly a capacity and resource point. I think the thing that we've been very clear to just try and emphasise, particularly to parishes or town councils that may be interested in this process, is again recognising the relationship with the local government commission for England in terms of their review of this council's current divisional arrangements, and then for subsequent to that, because this is certainly the view of that commission, that primarily you need to establish the arrangements for the principal council, and then there may well be, and we anticipate, as does that commission, there will be circumstances where community governance reviews will be required. The scale of that, though, is difficult to predict at this point.
I would hesitate for Monk Silver to be high on that list because my experience over the years is that they've very much valued their independence.
I think Monk Silver is an example of an extremely effective, very small paying capital. Yeah, as it happens, but they're all so different.
Yes, absolutely right. Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, a couple of points. Thanks for the report. Really interesting. A very good update of where we are and possibly where we'd like to be, and some of the bottlenecks to town and parish asset devolution. I think what would have really helped with the report was if we could have had a table of the town and parish councils as to where they sit in the different steps, so we know which councils are where. I know my own town council has found it quite frustrating that they would love to take on particular assets and they found it quite difficult and frustrating, and as a result there has been issues around one asset, but that's not neither here nor there. But I think a table would have added so we know where everybody is along that. Again, going back to page 87, the six steps table, which I found really useful and helpful as to what the steps are. You refer to that at that point, councils that are in negotiation, you can do either memorandums of understandings, agreements, so they can actually take on assets and start to look after them. And the paperwork in effect catches up, and that's got to be very valuable in terms of preventing asset dilapidation and costs to a council of putting that right. Is it possible that that step can be implemented maybe a little bit higher up the chain? So as maybe some of that, particularly things like playing fields or playgrounds, so as that sort of maintenance work can take place even though the asset is still in your hands, which again should prevent dilapidation, overgrowth. And town councils get the complaints from residents about just about anything, even when it is not something within their scope and control. Also, as well, who makes up the devolution board membership? Because I didn't know there was such a thing. Maybe I should have, but I apologize for not. And also, what post-evaluation work are we doing to ensure that the devolutions have actually been successful and have actually delivered, particularly the savings that they are meant to deliver? Because one of the costs that is referred to in there is sunk costs in inverted commas. And that is where my understanding of that is it's officer time that's gone in there, but it's not being quantified as a cost. It's been absorbed. And as to whether we should know what that sort of cost is working out at and what impact it has on the savings generated, because when you look at the bigger picture, the savings generated from Devo, whilst it's maybe of benefit to parish councils and town councils that want to take assets on, in the wider scale of things, it's not the biggest savings of all. So bearing in mind what we've talked about overload and pressures, it's possibly something, is there a risk that this programme might slip in terms of where it fits on in the bigger transformation picture? How's it going to fit in and relate and blend to that?
I'll make a start on those and then may hand over to colleagues for some further answers. So in terms of where parishes are at in the steps, I can look at whether we can include that. It may not be in the next update briefing to members. I'm not sure that we've got it sort of written out in that format, but certainly we can share it in a future briefing sheet if that's something that members would find valuable. In terms of the devolution board membership, that is an officer group. Its membership has changed a bit over time, but it effectively comprises all officers who are actively engaged in the delivery of the devolution programme. So we have representation from legal, property, HR, IT colleagues, regulatory and operational services, and finance colleagues. The list goes on, and comms as well are also engaged in that. So it's a very broad officer group that gathers bi-weekly to effectively discuss progress on the programme, unblock any issues, etc. So that's the membership of that group. Coming back to the point that was raised earlier about engagement with members throughout the decision-making process, the asset management group mentioned under step 3 also has member involvement as well. Councillor Philip, Councillor Lyshan and others sit as part of that group in terms of that decision-making process as well, just for added information there. The point about management agreements and can we put those in place earlier on? So at the moment, those are put in place once a certain amount of due diligence has been done and a certain level of discussion has taken place. Effectively, at the moment they're placed when we are relatively confident that the arrangements are going to be able to proceed and go ahead. But what it does mean is that a parish, town or city council can start managing and operating those services ahead of that full legal work taking place, which can take a significant period of time, has certainly been our experience. It may be possible that we could look at whether in certain circumstances that could happen earlier on in the process, but generally speaking, that's sort of where it's been taking place to date at the moment. There is, of course, also the possibility that we can look at that further in terms of if we have future discussions with city, town and parish councils who may wish to operate a service but may not wish to actually take on an associated asset with it as well. So that's also something that we're exploring as well. Post-evaluation work, at the moment our post-evaluation work, at least I know at the last meeting of this committee, a recommendation was around what are we doing to track the outcomes for our city, town and parish councils and any expenses that they're incurring after the fact. We are not at the moment doing extensive work on that just because of capacity on the programme, but it is something that we're considering for future, how we can look at that, whether that be some kind of feedback questionnaire or something that we would share with our city, town and parish councils. But we do continue to engage with all of them once they have taken on assets and services, and the door is always open to have discussions if they do have any concerns around that. Checking that savings are delivered are something that our finance colleagues do who are involved in the programme. So that work is ongoing in terms of that delivery. And in regard to the sunk costs that we experience, because of the high level of officer involvement in the programme, but in many cases, those officers being involved in the programme either for a very short period of time or for a small amount of their working hours, but over a longer period of time. That's why that is not accurately tracked. We don't have an accurate way of recording that at the moment, and in some cases doing so would be very difficult.
Thank you. Just to add to that point, the additional resource that was requested, particularly for legal and some project capacity, is for 9 months. Is that correct, Jess? A period of 9 months, which is our best estimate of what we think we need to keep moving the flow of the smaller parishes, as well as finalising the larger pieces of work. Obviously, we will review that if that doesn't transpire to be the case. As you say, a lot of the big town councils, parish councils have already they're quite progressed. We've already identified the savings associated with that. So I'm working with finance to make sure that we do deliver them, but they quite often have quite a tail. So we need to make sure we've got the capacity to do that so it doesn't create pressures where we've already identified savings. Subject to what comes out of budget planning and any changes to the council's approach around services, you're right, we've probably got to the point where it is a smaller pieces of work once we've finished the work that's in flow. And we do anticipate, with what we know at the moment, that at the end of about 9 months, it is likely to be more business as usual for us as a council. You know, as Jess says, that offer is part of our framework to city, town and parishes. We will always have that conversation. But if we can move the pipeline forward over these next 9 months, depending on what else comes forward, then we'll feel like we're starting to get into something that's proportionate in terms of the resourcing. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Could I just revert to this? And it's a point really that Councillor Filmer made as well. We're really talking about the devolution of local services and local activities, and the local member doesn't really seem to be explicitly in the process until possibly you get to step 4, when they may be consulted at that stage. I think it's too late in the process. I think local members need to be involved earlier, possibly at or around step 3, if not before.
Yes, I think that's something that we've certainly acknowledged and taken on board since the last meeting of this committee as well. And we have recently had discussions at our devolution board about making sure that members are informed at an earlier opportunity. So certainly the next 6 parishes that we're about to engage with, my intent is that we will be notifying ward members once that's gone through that asset management forum and been confirmed that we anticipate that we can move ahead with it. Then that is the point at which I would seek to update our local ward members.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Thanks, Jessica. On page 87, where we have the savings, I just wanted to really just check a few things with you there. Taunton isn't there again. Last time I was told it's because they'd been devolved previous to the table, but it's not there, and the bus hub has been devolved. So I'm a bit confused why Taunton still isn't on there. I was just wondering if you could explain that. Most of the big savings seem to have come from the open spaces, and I'm just trying to work out, you know, the potential for savings going forward, and whether that total savings listed includes the administration costs by this council, and also because there's a lot of costs going involved in all this work, and it's if the savings are going to be minimal now compared on what's left, I think at some point that perhaps needs a discussion as to whether this is generating enough savings for the amount of work that it is requiring. And I don't know if that's coming through in terms of the work that's being continued going forward. So I just some explanation on this, the total savings. Does it include is it literally the saving of that service? Because presumably some contracts are going to have to be renegotiated now as well, and the impact on those contracts where we still have to do work to open spaces in some areas and not in others, but we haven't got the volume of business. So you've got the whole economy of a scale that we've now lost in terms of negotiating a new contract. So I'm just trying to get a feel on what that savings figure actually does reflect, if that could be explained, and also the Taunton element, and maybe perhaps what other things are coming forward. I mean, I understand there's some assets, which makes great sense, fabulous, but the smaller things like the street cleaning, are those things that are coming forward in large numbers, or is it very individual to parishes what's coming forward? With regard to the communication with councillors, sorry, it's not great. It's really not great, and it really does need addressing. So many times you go to parish councils where they're talking about things, they've been in conversation with Somerset Council, we know nothing. It's embarrassing, it doesn't reflect very professionally on us, and, you know, could you not just produce a list of what ones you are discussing with which parish councillors, so we as councillors can see a simple list, what you are in discussion with? So we can know and we can check off on our list, is there something in our parishes that we need to be aware of? Because what's happening is the parishes are having conversations with Somerset Council that don't necessarily ever come to us. So we are not aware of those conversations that are taking place. And that's not really good enough as a Somerset councillor. It really isn't okay that we as Somerset councillors don't know what the parishes are discussing with you. And I can't emphasise that enough, because it frustrates me every time I go to a meeting. They say, "Oh yes, we've been talking about this and we're talking about this," and I'm completely ignorant of what's being discussed, what the implications are, and we just need to be part of that process. So I can't put a bigger plea in for that. Really can't. On page 87, where those steps that you list, I just think it'd be really helpful, and I don't know, maybe you have you shared that step process with parish councils? Because quite often the comment made at parish council, oh, well, we've put it in and we've heard nothing. And they don't know where they are in that process. So are you communicating with parish councils where they are in the process? Because I think either share that step-by-step process, if it's possible, with them, indicating where they sit in it, or, yeah, that's probably what I'm asking, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you. On the communication point, it's been heard, and I will be taking that forward from here. I know it's been a long time coming, but it is top of my sort of priority agenda at the moment is to rectify that, and that list, that briefing note coming around on sort of later this week will include that list of the parishes that we have received expressions of interest from and those that we are currently engaging with. So you will be able to see where they are. It may not have the steps against each individual one yet. You will be able to see whether we are or aren't engaging. So you've got that information, because I completely appreciate what you're saying, and that, you know, we have not been keeping members informed to the level that I would like us to have been. I'm also hoping that once we have that additional project officer role in place to support the programme, that we will be able to become much more proactive around our communications going forward as well. You know, there are things on our to-do list, for example, like updating the website with more relevant FAQs, more relevant information for our city, town and parish councils, so that they have more available to them. In the meantime, if you do have any queries, please do direct them to email the devolution mailbox, and we will pick those up. In terms of your point around
Can I just interrupt before you go on? One of the things that did happen a while back was if you were having a meeting with the parishes, we would get a note beforehand or an email beforehand saying what was on the agenda. So that, I think that is really, really helpful, that rather than Theo going to a meeting and thinking, oh, is this something people need to know about? Please can we ask that if you are having a meeting with the parish council's clerks, I think it is you invite, isn't it? Can you just tell us what's on the agenda and give us a copy of what's on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. It's probably better for me to respond, because it sounds like we're talking about how we engage with parishes and making sure that members are informed more generally than just devolution. Is that correct, Councillor Johnson? Yeah. So just to say, Jess is working very closely with Emma Plummer, who's our parish development officer. We do our best to make sure that nothing comes to the clerk's briefings that hasn't already. It's the first question that we ask our colleagues when they want to present something that hasn't already been seen and discussed with members. We do our best. We realise some of that is work in progress. Please, can I ask that if you find that's happened, could you actually tell us? So it's not to get anyone in trouble, but it really helps us work with our colleagues to say, have you spoken to the division member? Do they know what's going on? Have you briefed all members if they need to, etc.? So it would really help us with that safety net to some extent, because we do recognise it and we don't want to put members in that position. So it's a bit bigger than Jess's role, but she's part of the team that's looking at it in the round. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Just to add on your point about the steps and has that been shared with the parishes? Not yet, but it's going to be in that update that will be going to them on the 19th and the subsequent briefing as well. And the other thing that we are doing more is engaging with SALC as well. So I met with the CEO of Somerset Association of Local Councils yesterday, and provided with them with some information as well for them to likewise share with parishes through their newsletters, in the hope that that will help as well to increase that level of communication on different fronts additionally. In terms of those savings, information on Taunton I will ask finance colleagues to provide, and we'll revert back with that, all those details. Some of those assets which have transferred to Taunton Town Council have not actually been done as part of the devolution programme, so I believe that those savings have potentially been recorded elsewhere, but I will get that information in full and provide it to you after the meeting. In terms of those total savings,
up within the paper though, so if it's not part of devolution, it wouldn't be in the paper, would it?
Yeah.
So some of them have been done as part of devolution, but whilst part of the wider programme were picked up previously by particular colleagues in property, sort of on the side, so to speak, but I will make sure that I've got that information and we'll share it with you, and make it clearer what has been dealt with where as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, there was the general question about what's included in the savings.
Total savings.
Yes, the total savings. So you mentioned the administration costs there. So that is not included in those savings figures. So those savings figures are based on what the service is expecting to save through no longer having to continue that service. So there is not the comparison available between that administrative cost as mentioned, because it's very difficult for us to calculate those sunk costs involved in the programme. That is, contracts going forward are considered in the rounds as part of that Officer Devolution Board group, as part of the Asset Management Forum, to anticipate whether there would be any impacts upon other contracts that take place. For much of what has been devolved to date, particularly around open spaces, which is the majority of devolution activity, those services to date have been run in-house, and therefore it's not such a wide impact on contracts as there could be in amongst other services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lation.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add a point with regard to step 3, which is quite often at asset management group. Officers leave that meeting tasked with going through the due diligence and finding out what may or may not allow devolution on an asset. And I just raised 2 that I've seen. One of them would be when an officer is no longer with the council said only a council would own this asset because it was so complex. And another one where the parish where I live, the officers actually brought forward a 1902 copper plate written covenant that absolutely put the parish council off touching it with the barge pole because it was so restrictive. And so I think if it's possible, if these steps are going out to parishes, if it's possible, Sarah and Jess, to put something in step 3 about initial due diligence, perhaps in brackets, that may preclude devolution, because I think we have to manage expectation here. Thank you.
That's a fair point. Thank you very much. Councillor Southern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank the officers for the report, and especially from my point of view, having gone through quite a lot of devolution process with Yeovil Town Council, and I think we've had quite a few assets services, and shall I say, devolved down to us. It's a very complex process that this has been, and we're still trying to get to grips with quite a lot of it as well, actually, especially around things like the country park, where I think there's somewhere in the region of 20 parcels of land, I believe, that need to be sorted out legally and things like that. So I think I would say to councillors or anybody from the parish councils that are feeling a bit frustrated with this, that just be patient with it and work your way through it. I mean, the officers are doing a tremendous amount of work here, and very complicated work. Regards communication, I suppose I've been in a very lucky position, really, that I've been involved with this as a member and as a member of Yeovil Town Council, so I'm quite in a unique position here. However, though, I have parish councils within my division that I do go and talk to and speak to them. So I would encourage councillors to go and speak to your clerks, and not wait for your clerks to speak to you, or somebody from Somerset Council to. So, I mean, be proactive and find out for yourselves as much as possible, especially around the whole devolution process. So we still got some problems. We've still got some legal issues, and we still have, as Councillor Lation said, some little quirks with things that we want to do, and we're still trying to find solutions around that. But we'll get there in the end. But yeah, the process is long, it's hard, and I just say to members, just bear with it, and thank you very much to the officers for the work they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sutton. Is there any other member that wishes to speak? If not, can I just then say that I think two of the points that I'm particularly aware of that have been raised this morning, we do need to make explicit local member involvement in the process, and we need to make sure that local members are fully aware of potential devolution activity and more fully engaged with it at the earliest possible stage. Okay, if we can, and I think we are expressing some concern that that there should be arrangements in place for extending the benefits of devolution to smaller councils, both as independent entities and working together collectively. Are there any other points that we wish to make, ladies and gentlemen, at this stage? Otherwise, can I thank the officers very much for their presentation this morning, in particular Jessica. It's very refreshing to see you. And thank you very much for the work that you're doing and the report that you brought forward. Okay, thank you very much for that. Agenda item 8 is scrutiny review verbal update. Mr. Waldridge.
Thank you, Chair, and hopefully the committee will appreciate I will be succinct, not least of which because you will all know that the scrutiny review findings were considered at your last meeting, which was only 4 weeks ago. So you should be well aware in terms of the key recommendations and actions. You'll also be aware that that review then went on a day later to the full council meeting, where I know that you will also be aware that full council both welcomed and approved all of the scrutiny review recommendations, which now means that we have been mobilising the implementation plan with a particular focus during October and November on arranging further training and support, particularly for scrutiny councillors. So we are in the cusp of issuing a series of invites to all scrutiny councillors involving both officers of this council, but also you'll remember the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, particularly focused not on what is scrutiny, but much more focused in terms of some of the practical tools, some of the scrutiny practices to help and help support our journey in terms of achieving that good scrutiny. So that's a key focus, certainly over the next 2 months. We're also doing work, you remember we developed a draft scrutiny protocol that will then be being finalised and finessed to go forward to Constitution and Governance Committee, again to form part of the council's constitution, and that will embolden some of these practices, particularly in terms of achieving those improvements. So in highlight, I would probably highlight those as the key areas for this point, because I'm conscious that the committee will no doubt want to retain an ongoing oversight of the plan, but those are the key areas of focus.
All right. With that update. Right, thank you very much. And agenda item 9 is the Scrutiny Corporate and Resources Work Plan. So you will see this on page 99, but there is a proposed amendment now to this. And we're going to have some busy Fridays between now and the end of the year. It has been suggested that in order to better manage workflows and volume of items coming to meetings in the next 2 months, that there should be an additional meeting on the 5th of December at 10 o'clock to consider the Q2 reports, so that the January meeting can focus on the medium-term financial plan and Section 25 reporting from the Section 151 officer. Now, that therefore means that the 26th of November meeting will be slightly shorter than may be otherwise the case to receive the 2 items, one of which is time critical in order to be considered at the Executive and full council before the end of the year, which I think is the council tax reduction scheme. So we've got an extra meeting suggested, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what I would like some further teasing out of is the degree to which the 5th of December meeting can actually prefigure budget work. Mr. Heath, you might like to comment on that, because I think that picks up the point that Councillor Hobhouse is making about us getting to look at the budget at the earliest possible opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that's what I would like to be doing, please.
Thank you, Chair. So there's no reason at that 5th of December committee why we can't consider the budget proposals that have been consulted on. Executive will have considered those 2 days before. The papers will have been published. So if you wish to expand it to look at that, I'm very happy that we do that.
Okay. So that'll be something else to look forward to on the 5th of December. Councillor Stanton.
Time of day are you proposing that meeting on the 5th? Because I've got SRA board between 10 and 1. 10 o'clock. My apologies for absence then.
I mean, we could go for 6 o'clock, I suppose. But
2 o'clock or 3 o'clock.
We might be moving into the Christmas party season. Yes, Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, so is the meeting on the 5th of December, is that going to take some of the business from the 5th of January? So because there's budget, savings proposals, gross proposals, fees and charges, general fund, etc. Is that bit now going to be covered by the 5th of December meeting or not, basically?
I don't think it would be covered by it. I think what we're looking at here is giving you an overview of the proposals on the 5th, giving you the chance to say where you'd like some further information and bring that back on the 5th of January in particular, so that you can deep dive into those.
Yeah, that sounds a really good idea. Happy with that proposal.
Councillor Filmer.
It was equally going to raise the issue, because I'd had some concern looking at the agenda as it was. We weren't going to scrutinise Q2 until after we've been discussing the budget for next time. So bringing it forward, I think, makes a huge amount of sense. So very happy with that proposal.
Councillor Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the previous 2 years I've been involved with this scrutiny, we have had a complete day's budget, complete day on the budget with the chairs and representatives of the other scrutiny committees present. We don't seem to have it scheduled in this year.
I think the 5th of January was intended to be just that.
On the 5th of January, it's an all-day meeting with the other scrutiny chairs and vice chairs invited.
That was certainly my suggestion to Democratic Service. I think that's what
that wasn't made clear at the Climate and Place Scrutiny Committee last week.
Whether or not it takes all day, of course, is entirely at the discretion of members, Councillor Hobhouse. You might find that you're able to focus and get really down into the business within 6 hours rather than a full 12. Who knows?
I'm not sorry. What I'm trying to get at here, Mr. Chairman, is that we need to get the information out to the other scrutiny chairs and vice chairs and members who wish to attend now, if you wish that to be a joint meeting again.
So the intention was always to have the 5th of December to look at the Q2 position and a summary of the consultation that's going out, so that you can choose the areas you want to dive into. The 5th of January was intended to be a joint meeting of all the committees to pull together your thinking, your discussions, and the 29th of January is a meeting to summarise those, so that we've got a succinct form that the executive can then consider alongside responses from other consultations in formulating their final plans, which go forward to be approved by executive for recommendation by the council.
Right, 28th of January, I think it's 28th.
That has quite a few bits on it already.
Makes sense. Happy with that?
Totally, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
it's just a matter of getting the information out.
Yeah. Well, now if we've
28th looks quite busy. It looks.
If we've got that
January.
generally speaking agreed now, hopefully that can be shared as quickly as possible with the other members. All right. Right. Good. So that's fine. Yes.
Can I just question the busyness of January the 28th meeting? It looks like quite a full list.
Whether or not they need to be matters of huge debate, however, The non-domestic rating discretionary relief and hardship policy may be relatively straightforward. And I suspect it's also things that have to be done more or less at that time. Sue?
Yes, it's just a bit of clarification on the community engagement and local community networks coming on the 26th of November. Is that going to be the SWAP report that was commissioned? And I know some chairmen were interviewed in the process of that report, because it seems a bit premature for the work that's currently going on.
It may well be an update rather than a conclusion. But
thank you, Chair. Just to say on that point that the SWAP audit report has just been finalised and it's being shared with the people that are working, Citizen Network, who are working on the overall review that we're doing. It's of community engagement and development. LCNs are within scope, but it's looking wider than that in terms of our relationship as a council with our communities. So they will be cognizant of those recommendations. And I understand that the route for that report anyway will be to audit committee in the first instance, but we also need to advise audit committee of the wider review, just so we've got the wider context. In terms of what will come in November, I think it depends on the stage, but I know that the research phase has just concluded in terms of the survey, the interviews, the focus groups, etc. I'm anticipating that we will get an initial report in the next 2 weeks, so I think that might be it, and then propose next steps. There will be a series of workshops, but I don't want to steal Kate's thunder for that report. Thank you.
So I suspect it'll be a review of work ongoing rather than necessarily a conclusion. And constitution and governance will also have to be involved in the process about future arrangements with LCNs or other bodies.
And I just asked, do we know when the SWAP report will go to audit?
I believe it's too late for, yes, it is, isn't it? Because it's imminent. Yeah, it'll be the next one, I would anticipate. I do not know whether the whole report will go or whether it'll be the highest scoring recommendations that get flagged, but I'll find out.
Right, if there's nothing else in, ladies and gentlemen, we've got our work cut out for the next 3 months. So a busy period for all of us. Can I thank you all very much for attending this meeting, either in person or online, and for the very valuable contributions you've all made. It has, as always, been a pleasure. Thank you very much. I hereby close the meeting.